My wife held my insulin pen over the bathroom sink and said, "I decide what you need, now give me your e-wallet password." I begged her to stop, but she just laughed. "You are sweating already, Desmond. How high is your blood sugar now?" 500. She watched the clear liquid drip down the drain, but she did not know that 9 days later she would be the one crying in court, and I would be the one deciding her future. My name is Desmond Bell. I am 68 years old. For 40 years, I built firewalls and security systems for the biggest banks in America. I know how to spot a threat from 1,000 miles away. I know how to lock a digital door so tight that even the government cannot get in. But I made the classic mistake of an old man in love. I forgot to put a firewall around my own heart. I assumed the people eating at my table loved me for who I was and not for what was in my retirement accounts. I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning. There was no argument. There was no warning. I walked into the master bathroom feeling that familiar and terrifying thickness in my blood. My head was pounding like a drum. My vision was starting to blur at the edges. I needed my morning dose of insulin immediately. I reached for the case on the marble counter, but it was gone. Camilla was standing by the sink. She is 60 years old but fights every day to look 40. She was wearing her silk robe, the one I bought her for our anniversary last month. In her hand, she held my life support. She looked at me in the mirror, and her eyes were not the eyes of the woman I married 15 years ago. They were cold and hard like flint. She uncapped the pen. "Camilla, what are you doing?" I asked. My voice was already slurring slightly. "I need that." She tilted the pen. A single drop of clear liquid formed at the tip and fell into the white porcelain sink. "You do not need anything until I say you do," she replied calmly. "Now the password, Desmond. The one for the cold storage wallet, the one with the retirement fund." I lunged forward. It was instinct, survival. But before I could take 2 steps, a heavy shoulder slammed into my chest. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I hit the cold tile floor hard. My hips screamed in pain. I looked up and saw Ethan, my son-in-law. He is a tall white man with a smile that always seemed too wide and hands that have never done a day of hard labor in their life. He stood over me wearing a t-shirt that said, "Crypto King." He looked down at me with a sneer of absolute disgust. "Stay down, old man," Ethan said. He kicked my cane away. It skidded across the tiles and hit the bathtub with a hollow clang. "You are not in charge here anymore." I tried to push myself up, but my arms were shaking. The hyperglycemia was setting in faster than usual, probably triggered by the stress. Sweat was pouring down my face, cold and clammy. "Ethan, please," I wheezed. "This is not a game. I could go into a coma." Ethan laughed. It was a dry, cruel sound. "That is the point, Desmond. That is exactly the point. We know you have $2 million sitting in that hardware wallet. We know you moved your pension fund into Bitcoin back in 2015. And we are tired of waiting for you to die of natural causes so we can spend it." Camilla squeezed the pen again. A steady stream of insulin squirted out, washing away down the drain. "Stop," I shouted. Or I tried to shout, but it came out as a desperate croak. "I will give it to you. Just stop." She stopped. She held the pen up, examining the remaining liquid. It was half empty now. "Write it down," she commanded. Ethan tossed a notepad and a pen onto the floor next to my face. I grabbed the pen, but my fingers were numb. I could barely feel the plastic barrel. I looked up at the bathroom door, hoping for a miracle, hoping for sanity. And there she was, Jasmine, my daughter. She stood in the doorway holding a cup of coffee. She watched me lying on the floor, gasping for air, while her husband and her stepmother tortured me. Jasmine is my biological daughter. I raised her alone for 10 years before I met Camilla. I paid for her college tuition. I paid for the down payment on her first house. I held her hand when she got her tonsils out. I thought she was the one person in this world who would never hurt me. "Jasmine, help me," I whispered. "Call 911. Jasmine took a sip of her coffee. She did not look at me. She looked at the wall. "Just give them the code, Dad," she said. Her voice was flat and devoid of emotion. "You are being selfish. You have all that money sitting there doing nothing while Ethan needs capital for his new venture. We are drowning in debt. Dad and you are just sitting on a fortune." The pain in my chest had nothing to do with my heart or my blood sugar. It was the sensation of my soul breaking. My little girl. The child I had carried on my shoulders. She was not a victim here. She was a co-conspirator. This was not a sudden argument. This was a planned coup. They had discussed this. They had agreed that my life was worth less than Ethan's failed crypto projects. I looked back at the notepad. I knew I had to think like a security engineer, not like a father. If I gave them nothing, they would let me die right here on the floor. If I gave them the real password, they would drain the account in 10 minutes, and then they would let me die anyway because I would be a witness. I needed to buy time. I gripped the pen with my shaking hand. I wrote down a string of 12 words. Ethan snatched the notepad from the floor. He pulled a laptop from his backpack, which was sitting by the door. He sat on the closed toilet lid and started typing furiously. "It is processing," he muttered. I lay on the floor, breathing in short, shallow gasps. My vision was tunneling. I saw black spots dancing in front of my eyes. "It unlocked," Ethan shouted. He looked at Camilla with greed burning in his eyes. "We are in." Camilla smiled. It was the smile of a predator that had just brought down a gazelle. She walked over to me. She grabbed my arm, roughly pinching the skin of my abdomen. "You are a smart man, Desmond," she whispered. She injected the insulin, but she pulled the needle out early. "I know my dose. I have been a type 1 diabetic for 30 years. I know exactly how long the injection needs to last." She had given me maybe 10 units. I needed 25 to counteract the high blood sugar I was experiencing. That was not enough, I gasped. "I need the full dose." Camilla stood up and smoothed her silk robe. "It is enough to keep you alive," she said coldly. "But it is not enough to make you comfortable. You are going to feel weak, Desmond. You are going to feel sick. You are going to be too dizzy to walk to the police station and too confused to call a lawyer." She kicked my leg lightly. "From now on, I decide your dosage. If you behave, you get relief. If you act out, you get sugar water. Do you understand?" I looked at them. Ethan was staring at the laptop screen, entranced by the numbers. Jasmine was still looking at the wall, refusing to meet my eyes. Camilla was towering over me like a queen. I understood perfectly. "Get him up," Ethan, Camilla ordered. "Take him to the guest room, the one with the reinforced shutters." Ethan put the laptop down. He grabbed me by the back of my pajama shirt and hauled me to my feet. I stumbled, my legs feeling like rubber. He dragged me out of the bathroom and down the hallway. I passed pictures on the wall, pictures of us at Disneyland, pictures of my graduation, pictures of Jasmine's wedding where I paid $40,000 for the reception so she could have the fairy tale she wanted. They were lies, all of them, just frames covering the holes in the drywall. Ethan threw me onto the bed in the downstairs guest room. This room used to be my office before I retired. I knew it well. I knew the window looked out onto the backyard fence. I knew the door had a heavy oak frame. He walked to the window. I saw that he had a cordless drill in his waistband. He took a piece of 2x4 wood from the floor and drilled it across the window frame, sealing it shut. The screech of the drill was deafening in the small room. He turned to me. "Do not try anything stupid, Desmond." We disconnected the landline. I jammed the Wi-Fi signal for this side of the house. "You have no cell phone. You have no internet. You are a ghost." He walked to the door. "Oh, and Dad," he said, mocking the title. "Thanks for the donation. I promise I will turn that 2 million into 10 million by next week." He slammed the door. I heard the distinct click of a deadbolt sliding into place. A deadbolt that had been installed on the outside of the door. I lay in the semi-darkness. My head was still spinning from the high blood sugar, but the small dose of insulin was starting to take the edge off the immediate crisis. My mind began to clear just a fraction. They thought they had won. They thought they had the keys to the kingdom, but they did not know two things. First, the password I gave them was for the decoy wallet. I set it up 5 years ago. It holds $500,000. A lot of money, yes. But the main wallet, the one with the bulk of my life savings and the compounded interest from my early Bitcoin investments, is hidden behind a cascading encryption key that requires my voice biometrics to access. And second, they forgot that I designed the smart home system they were currently living in. Ethan said he jammed the Wi-Fi. He is an idiot. He bought a $20 signal jammer from the internet. He does not know that the continuous glucose monitor attached to my left arm, the device that tracks my blood sugar 24/7, does not use Wi-Fi. It uses a dedicated cellular frequency to upload data to the cloud so my doctor can see it in real time. I looked at the small white disc adhered to my skin. It was flashing a tiny green light. They had taken my phone. They had taken my laptop. They had locked me in a room, but they had left me with a transmitter. I closed my eyes and focused on my breathing. I had to survive the half doses. I had to survive the betrayal, because I was about to use my own blood sugar levels to send a message that would burn their world to the ground. Hours passed. The room grew hot. The air conditioning vent seemed to have been closed. I was thirsty. A thirst so deep it felt like I had swallowed sand. That is the hallmark of high blood sugar. Your body tries to flush the sugar out and it dehydrates you rapidly. I crawled to the door and pounded on it. Water, I croaked. I need water. The door opened an hour later. Ethan stood there. He held a tray. On the tray was a glass of tap water and a plate of food. I looked at the food and realized the cruelty of their plan was just beginning. It was a stack of white bread pancakes covered in cheap syrup and a large bowl of white pasta. Carbohydrates. Pure sugar. For a diabetic in my condition, this was not food. This was poison. Eat up, Ethan said, smiling. You need your strength. If I ate this, my blood sugar would skyrocket. I could go into ketoacidosis. I could die within 24 hours. I cannot eat this. Ethan, I said. I need protein. I need vegetables. This will kill me. Ethan shrugged. This is what we have. Grocery prices are high, you know. Maybe if you gave us the password to the other accounts, we could afford steak. He knew. He knew about the decoy wallet. He must have realized the balance was lower than he expected. I gave you everything, I lied. Do not lie to me, old man, Ethan snarled. I saw the transaction history. You moved funds. Where is the rest of it? I did not move anything, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That is all there is. The market crashed. I lost a lot. He kicked the bed frame. Liar. We will see how much you lie after a few days of this diet. He set the tray on the nightstand and walked out, locking the door again. I stared at the pasta. My stomach was cramping with hunger. My mouth was dry. I drank the water in one gulp, but it was not enough. I looked at the sensor on my arm. If I wanted to send a message, I needed to manipulate the data. I needed to create a pattern on the graph that my doctor or his AI monitoring system would flag as an anomaly. I needed to spike my sugar and then crash it. I needed to create a Morse code signal with my biology. I picked up the syrup-soaked pancake. My hands were trembling. I took a bite. It tasted like ash and betrayal. I swallowed it. I watched the clock on the wall. I waited 15 minutes. Then I stuck my finger down my throat and forced myself to vomit into the small wastebasket by the desk. I could not digest the sugar. I just needed it to hit my bloodstream for a moment to register a spike on the sensor, and then I needed to purge it to survive. I repeated this process 3 times over the next 6 hours. Spike, purge, wait, spike, purge, wait. It was exhausting. I was covered in sweat. I was weak. But I knew that somewhere in a server room in Seattle, a data log was recording a strange oscillating pattern in the blood glucose levels of patient Desmond Bell. I just hoped someone was watching. The next morning, the door opened again. This time it was Jasmine. She looked tired. She held a basket of laundry. She was avoiding looking at me. Jasmine, I whispered. She stopped but did not turn around. Why are you doing this? I asked. I gave you everything. I bought you that car when you turned 16. I paid for your wedding. I have never said no to you. She turned around then. Her face was twisted in anger. That is the problem, Dad, she hissed. You gave me things. You threw money at me. But you never listened to me. You never respected Ethan. You looked at him like he was a loser from the day I brought him home. Because he is a loser, Jasmine, I said softly. He is stealing my money to buy imaginary coins on the internet. He is going to lose it all. He is a visionary, she screamed. And you are just a jealous old dinosaur. You are hoarding wealth while we struggle to pay our mortgage. We deserve that money. We are the ones with a future. You are just waiting to die. The words hit me harder than Ethan's shoulder check. So this is it, I asked. You are going to starve me to death. We are not starving you, she said, pointing to the cold pasta from the night before. You are choosing not to eat. That is on you. She walked over to the desk where I used to keep my soldering iron and my spare computer parts. She swept them all into a trash bag. We are clearing this room out, she said. Ethan needs an office for his trading. She saw the wastebasket with the vomit. She wrinkled her nose. Disgusting, she muttered. She tied up the bag and walked out. She did not bring me water. She did not bring me insulin. I was alone again. I checked my sensor. The battery was at 40%. I had maybe 3 days of data transmission left before the device died. Once it died, I would be completely cut off. I needed to escalate the signal. I lay back on the bed. I closed my eyes. I thought about the code I had written for the bank vaults. I thought about the trapdoors I built into the software. I realized I had a trapdoor here too. The decoy wallet. Ethan had the password. He had access to $500,000. He was probably already moving it. But he did not know that the decoy wallet had a time lock trigger. I programmed it myself. If more than $10,000 is moved out of that wallet without a secondary voice authorization from my phone, within 24 hours, the system automatically sends a duress protocol email to my attorney, Ms. Harper. I checked my watch. It had been 20 hours since I gave them the password. If Ethan had been greedy, and I knew he was greedy, he would have tried to move a large chunk immediately. That meant the clock was ticking. In 4 hours, an email would land in Ms. Harper's inbox. The email would contain my GPS coordinates from the last known login and a pre-recorded video message I made 2 years ago saying, "If you are receiving this, I am being coerced. Do not call my cell phone. Send private security to my home immediately." I just had to stay alive for 4 more hours. But then the door opened again, and my heart stopped. Ethan walked in. But he was not holding a food tray. He was holding a pair of pliers and a thick roll of duct tape. Behind him, Camilla was holding a syringe. It was full, too full. "That is enough waiting, Desmond," she said. "We tried to do this the easy way. We tried to let you be comfortable. But Jasmine says you are still running your mouth, and Ethan says the wallet is asking for a voice code." Ethan smiled. "You thought you were clever, didn't you, old man? A voice lock. Well, we are going to get that voice authorization one way or another." He snapped the pliers. I backed up against the headboard. I was weak. I was dizzy. I was outnumbered. But I was Desmond Bell, and I had one card left to play. "If you touch me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I will bite my own tongue off." Ethan paused. "What if I cannot speak? You cannot get the voice authorization," I said. "And if you kill me, the wallet locks forever. It uses a dead man's switch linked to my heartbeat on this sensor." I pointed to the sensor on my arm. It was a lie. The sensor did not link to the wallet. But Ethan did not know that. He was a crypto bro, not an engineer. He believed in magic tech. Ethan hesitated. He looked at Camilla. "Is that true?" he asked. Camilla narrowed her eyes. "He is bluffing." "Are you willing to bet $5 million on it?" I asked. Ethan lowered the pliers. The greed in his eyes was warring with the violence. "Tie him up," he said to Camilla. "We will wait. The hunger will break him." They taped my wrists to the bed frame. They taped my ankles. Then they left. I looked at the clock. 3 hours until the email sent. I was dehydrated. My blood sugar was critically high. My limbs were losing sensation. But I smiled. Because I knew Ms. Harper. She was a shark. And when she smelled blood, she did not call the police. She called her own people. And her people did not knock. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to outsmart people who underestimated you. 3 hours passed. The silence in the house was heavy. I could hear them downstairs. They were arguing. Ethan was shouting about the voice code. Jasmine was crying. Then I heard it. Not a siren. Not a knock. A crash. The sound of the front door being kicked in. I heard shouting. I heard the distinct sound of a taser being deployed. Zap. A thud. Then heavy boots on the stairs. The door to my room was kicked open. The wood splintered. A man in tactical gear stood there. He had a patch on his chest that said, "Harper Legal Security." He looked at me. He looked at the duct tape. He tapped his radio. "Target secured. Condition critical but alive. Extraction team move in." He walked over and cut the tape on my wrists. He offered me a bottle of water. "Mr. Bell," he said, "Ms. Harper sends her regards. She says you are late for your quarterly review." I took the water. My hands were shaking, but I managed to drink. Downstairs, I heard Camilla screaming, "Get off me! You can't do this! This is my house!" I swung my legs off the bed. I tried to stand, but I stumbled. The guard caught me. "Easy, sir. We have a medic incoming." "No," I said. "Help me downstairs. I want to see them." He supported my weight, and we walked out of the room. We went down the stairs. The living room was a wreck. The front door was lying on the floor. Ethan was on the ground zip-tied, screaming about his rights. Jasmine was sitting on the sofa, sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Camilla was being held by 2 guards. Her silk robe was torn. Her hair was a mess. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. "Desmond," she pleaded, changing her tune instantly. Tell them to stop. It was just a misunderstanding. We were taking care of you. You were sick. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I leaned on the guard for support. I looked at my wife. I looked at the woman who had poured my life down the drain. I checked my watch. The email has been sent, Camilla, I said, raspy but loud. The police are 5 minutes out. Ms. Harper has already frozen the assets. Desmond, please, she begged. We are family. I looked at Jasmine. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Daddy, she whispered. I felt a pang of pain in my heart. But then I remembered the white bread. I remembered the insulin going down the sink. No, I said. Family does not let you die of thirst. Family does not hold your life hostage for a password. I turned to the guard. Get me out of here. The air in this house is toxic. As they walked me out to the waiting armored SUV, I heard the sirens approaching. I did not look back. 9 days later, I sat in the courtroom. I was in a wheelchair, still recovering my strength, but my mind was sharp. Ms. Harper stood before the judge. She played the recordings from the hidden device Marcus the nurse had left under my bed. I haven't told you about Marcus yet, have I? He was the one bright spot in those dark days. But that is a story for part 2, Ms. Harper showed the logs from my glucose monitor. She showed the pattern. SOS. Camilla sat at the defense table. She was not wearing silk. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit. She looked at me and started to cry. But I knew the truth. She was not crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she had lost. The judge looked at the evidence. He looked at me. He looked at them. Denied bail, he said, slamming the gavel. I wheeled myself out of the courtroom. The sun was shining. I took my insulin pen out of my pocket. I dialed the correct dose. I injected it. I decided what I needed. And I decided I needed to be free. I woke up to the sound of a hammer striking wood. My head was pounding with a rhythm that matched the blows. It felt like my brain was swelling inside my skull, a side effect of the incorrect insulin dosage Camilla had given me the night before. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, like it was filled with lead. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my eyes. The room was dim. I looked toward the window. The beautiful view of the garden, the one my late wife and I had planted 20 years ago, was gone. In its place was a sheet of plywood. Thick nails had been driven through the frame, sealing me in darkness. I was in the downstairs guest suite, but it no longer felt like a part of my home. It felt like a cell. I tried to stand. My legs wobbled, but they held. I moved to the door and tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. I was a prisoner in the house I had paid for. I turned back to the room, scanning for anything I could use as a weapon or a tool. That is when I saw it. Up in the corner of the ceiling, a small red light blinked in the shadows. A camera. I recognized the model immediately. It was a high-definition security camera with night vision and two-way audio. I knew it because I was the one who bought it. I was the one who installed the security system in this house to protect my family from intruders. Now that same system was being used to watch me like a lab rat. The irony tasted like bile in my throat. The lock on the door clicked. I stiffened, bracing myself against the heavy oak dresser. The door swung open and Ethan walked in. He was not wearing his usual casual clothes. He was wearing gloves. He held a plastic bin in his hands. "Good morning, Desmond," he said with that fake cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. "Time for a little cleanup." He walked over to the nightstand where I had left my smartphone charging. He snatched it up and tossed it into the bin. Then he grabbed my laptop from the desk. He opened the drawers, dumping out my pens, my notebooks, and my old hard drives. Everything went into the bin. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice raspy. "That is my property." "It is evidence," Ethan corrected. "Or distraction. Either way, you do not need it. You have plenty of time to think about that password now." He walked over to this corner and unplugged the Wi-Fi extender I had installed to ensure the guest room had good signal. He stomped on it, shattering the plastic casing. "Oops," he said, smiling. "Looks like the internet is down. I cut the hard line to this room too. And just so you know, I installed a signal jammer in the hallway. Even if you hit a second phone, it would be a brick. You are completely offline, Desmond. No one can hear you. No one can see you, except us." He pointed to the camera. "Smile for the audience, Dad. We want to make sure you do not hurt yourself in your confusion." He turned to leave the bin, full of my connection to the outside world, tucked under his arm. "Why are you doing this?" "Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "I gave you a roof over your head. I treated you like a son." Ethan stopped. He looked back at me and his face twisted into a sneer. You treated me like a charity case, he spat. You and your lectures about hard work and savings. You think because you made money in the 90s, you are a genius. You are just a relic. The future belongs to people who take what they want. He slammed the door. The lock clicked again. I was alone in the semi-darkness with nothing but the hum of the air conditioning and the blinking red eye of the camera. I checked my pockets. Empty. They had taken everything while I slept. I was cut off. Isolated. A ghost in my own machine. Hours passed. The silence was heavy and suffocating. My stomach began to cramp. I needed food, but more importantly, I needed the right kind of food. My blood sugar was destabilizing. I could feel the cold sweat starting to form on the back of my neck. The door opened again. This time, Ethan returned carrying a tray. The smell hit me first. It was sweet cloying and artificial. He set the tray down on the small table by the window. Lunchtime, he announced. I looked at the meal. It was a nightmare on a plate. 4 slices of cheap white bread completely dry, a mound of white pasta with no sauce, just butter, and a large glass of dark fizzing soda. This was not a meal. This was a biological weapon. For a type 1 diabetic, these simple carbohydrates would hit my bloodstream like a bomb. Without the proper insulin dosage to counteract it, my glucose levels would spike to dangerous heights within an hour. I cannot eat this, I said, backing away. You know I cannot eat this. This is pure sugar. Ethan shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. Beggars cannot be choosers, Desmond. This is what we have. Besides, you look a little pale. You probably need the energy. He picked up the glass of soda. The condensation dripped down his hand. Drink it, he ordered. I shook my head. No, I want water, just plain water. Ethan's face hardened. He took 2 steps forward, closing the distance between us. He was younger than me, stronger than me, and he knew it. He grabbed the back of my neck, his fingers digging into my flesh. He forced the glass to my lips. I said, drink it, he hissed. You are going to eat what we give you. We need you strong enough to remember that password, but weak enough to stay put. This will do the job perfectly. The carbonated liquid splashed against my lips. I clamped my mouth shut, but he squeezed my jaw. Instinct took over and I swallowed a mouthful. The sugar burned my throat. It tasted like poison. He let go of me and I stumbled back, coughing. Good, he said. Now eat the bread, all of it. I will be watching on the camera. If I see you throwing it away or hiding it under the mattress, I will come back in here and I will inject you with enough insulin to stop your heart. Do not test me, old man. He left the room. I stood there staring at the tray of white death. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. The small amount of soda I had swallowed was already racing through my system. I looked up at the camera. I knew he was watching. I knew he was waiting for me to defy him. I sat down at the table. I picked up a slice of white bread. It was soft and processed. I took a bite. I chewed slowly, forcing myself to swallow. I had to make it look convincing. I ate the second slice, then the third. But I did not swallow everything. I used an old trick I learned from a friend who had served in prison. I chewed the bread into a paste, and then when I pretended to wipe my mouth with the paper napkin, I spit the mass into the folds of the paper. I did it quickly, smoothly, masking the movement with a cough. I repeated the process with the pasta. I ate some just enough to keep him from storming back in, but I spit out as much as I could into the pile of napkins. I shoved the napkins into the empty soda cup and crushed it down, making it look like trash. I felt sick. The sugar I had ingested was making my head swim. My vision was getting spotty. I needed to get rid of this food before he came back to check the trash. I looked around the room. There was no bathroom attached to this guest room. I was trapped. Then I remembered the loose floorboard under the bed. It was a defect in the house's construction, one I had meant to fix years ago. I crawled under the bed, dragging the cup of spit-out food with me. I pried the board up with my fingernails. There was a small space between the subfloor and the foundation. I dumped the contents of the cup into the hole and pushed the board back into place. It was disgusting. It was degrading. But it was survival. I crawled back out and sat on the bed, breathing heavily. I had bought myself a few hours. But I knew this was only the beginning. They were going to keep feeding me this poison until my mind broke or my body gave out. I lay back on the pillows, trying to slow my heart rate. I felt helpless. They had taken my phone. They had jammed the signal. They had boarded the windows. I was a security expert and I had been completely neutralized. Or so I thought. I rolled up my sleeve and looked at my left arm. Attached to the back of my tricep was a small white disc about the size of a quarter. My continuous glucose monitor, or CGM. It measures my blood sugar levels every 5 minutes and sends the data to a receiver. Usually that receiver is my phone. But Ethan had taken my phone. However, I remembered something. Something that Ethan, the arrogant crypto investor, did not know about hardware. This specific model of CGM was the newest generation. I had been part of the beta test group for it. It was designed for patients in rural areas with poor internet. It did not just rely on Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It had a built-in emergency uplink, a low-frequency narrow-band cellular transmitter that connected directly to a global satellite network dedicated to medical telemetry. It was designed to work anywhere on Earth independent of local networks. Ethan had jammed the Wi-Fi. He had jammed the standard cell frequencies. But he had not jammed the satellite uplink because he did not know it existed. I looked at the tiny sensor. It was flashing a slow, steady green light. It was transmitting. Somewhere in a cloud server, my blood sugar data was being logged. My doctor, Dr. Sterling, had access to that log. He checked it once a week. But once a week was too slow. I would be dead by then. I needed him to check it now. I needed to trigger an alarm. The system was programmed to send an alert to my doctor if my readings went critical, too high or too low. But if I just let my sugar go high, Ethan would win. I would go into a coma. I needed to send a message that a machine could not generate by accident, a message that showed intelligent design. I looked at the graph in my mind. Blood sugar levels are usually a wave rising and falling gently. I needed to make spikes, sharp, unnatural spikes. If I ate the sugar, my levels would shoot up. If I purged or did intense exercise, they would drop. I could draw with my blood. I could create a pattern on the graph. A high spike followed by a sharp drop. Then another spike. Then another drop. Morse code, short spike, short spike, short spike. S, long duration, high sugar, long duration, O, short, 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 S, S-O-S. It was dangerous. It was reckless. Manipulating my body chemistry like this could cause a seizure. It could stop my heart, but it was the only line of communication I had left. I looked at the camera again. The red light blinked at me, mocking my captivity. "You think you cut the line, Ethan," I whispered to the empty room. "But you forgot one thing. I am the signal." I reached for the last slice of white bread I had hidden in my pocket. I took a bite. I swallowed. The work began now. I would turn my own suffering into a beacon, and I would make sure that when Dr. Sterling saw that graph, he would see not a sick old man, but a desperate plea for help written in the ink of my own blood. I closed my eyes and prepared for the war that was about to take place inside my veins. The headache was blinding. It felt like a railroad spike being driven into my temple. My vision was swimming in and out of focus, a side effect of the dangerous game I was playing with my own blood sugar. I had spent the last 6 hours forcing my glucose levels up and down, trying to etch a desperate SOS into the digital cloud. But now, as the sun began to set, casting long orange shadows across the floor of my prison cell, I felt the toll it was taking. My mouth was dry as dust. My limbs felt heavy and useless. The lock on the door clicked. I stiffened, pushing myself up against the headboard. It was Jasmine. My daughter walked in carrying a bucket of cleaning supplies and a fresh roll of trash bags. She did not look at me. She kept her eyes focused on the floor, on the mess I had made hiding the food. She started picking up the crumpled napkins I had spit the pasta into. She moved with mechanical efficiency, like a hotel maid cleaning up after a difficult guest. "Jasmine," I whispered. My voice was cracked and weak. "Look at me." She ignored me. She tied up the trash bag with a sharp, violent motion. "Jasmine, please," I said louder. "I am your father. I paid for your degree. I paid for the down payment on your house. Why are you letting them do this to me?" She froze. Her back was to me, but I saw her shoulders tense. She slowly turned around. Her face was not the face of the little girl I used to take for ice cream. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated resentment. "You paid for the down payment," she repeated, her voice low and trembling. "You paid $20,000, Dad. Do you know how much that house cost? $500,000. Do Do you know what the mortgage payments are? $3,000 a month. I blinked, confused by her anger. I gave you what I could, Jasmine. I wanted you to be independent. Independent, she laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You sat on a mountain of Bitcoin, Dad. You bought it back in 2015 when it was nothing. I remember you talking about it at dinner, boring us to tears with your security protocols and your blockchain theories. You watched that account grow into millions. Millions. And while you watched your numbers go up, Ethan was drowning. She took a step toward the bed. Her eyes were wet, but there was no sadness in them, only rage. Ethan had a vision, she spat. He wanted to launch his own exchange. He needed seed money. Just $200,000. That is all he asked for. And you said no. You said it was too risky. You said he needed a business plan. You humiliated him, Dad. You looked at him like he was a child playing with Monopoly money. Because he was, I said softly. He lost everything, Jasmine. I tried to warn you. He lost it because he did not have enough capital to weather the dip, she screamed. If you had given him the money, he would be a billionaire by now. We would be set for life. Set. But no. You hoarded it. You kept it in that cold wallet like a dragon sitting on gold. You let us struggle. You let us fight about money every single night while you sat in this paid-off house planning your cruises. The truth was finally out. It was not just about the debt. It was about envy. It was about the narrative she had built in her head where I was the villain for not funding her husband's gambling addiction. She did not see my thrift as wisdom. She saw it as malice. You are my daughter, I said, feeling a tear roll down my cheek. I was saving it for you, for your future, for your children. I do not want it when I am 50, she hissed. I want it now. I deserve it now. I am the one who visits you. I am the one who listens to your stories. I earned that money. She glared at me, her chest heaving. And now you are going to give it to us. All of it. And if you have to suffer a little bit to learn how to be generous, then so be it. Maybe now you know what it feels like to be helpless. She turned back to her cleaning. She grabbed the empty soda cup I had crushed. As she reached for it, her eyes caught something. She stopped. She looked at my left arm. I had rolled up my sleeve earlier to check the sensor to make sure the green light was still blinking. In my exhaustion, I had forgotten to roll it back down. The white disc of the continuous glucose monitor was visible against my dark skin. The tiny green LED pulsed once. Jasmine stared at it. Her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" she asked. "It is my monitor," I said, quickly pulling my arm back. "It just checks my sugar. You know that. I have worn one for years." She took a step closer. She looked from the sensor to my face, then to the window where the signal jammer was supposedly blocking everything. "Why is it blinking?" she asked. "It always blinks." I lied. "It is just measuring." She reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She leaned in, inspecting the device. "Ethan said he killed the Wi-Fi," she muttered. "He said no electronics. It does not use Wi-Fi." I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It uses Bluetooth to the phone you took. It is useless without the phone, Jasmine. It is just a piece of plastic right now." She looked at me. She saw the sweat on my forehead. She saw the fear in my eyes. She knew me too well. She knew when I was trying to outsmart someone. "You are lying," she whispered. "You are doing something with this. That is why you are not eating. That is why you look like you are calculating something." "No, Jasmine, please," I begged. "It is medical equipment. If you take it off, I could die. I will not know if I am crashing." She did not listen. The paranoia that had been festering in this house for days took over. She saw a threat. She saw a wire I could use to strangle their plans. She dug her fingernails under the adhesive patch. "Jasmine, do not," I shouted. She ripped it. It was not a gentle removal. The sensor is attached to the body with a small filament that goes under the skin and a strong medical adhesive meant to stay on for 14 days. She tore it off like she was starting a lawnmower. I screamed. A sharp, stinging pain shot up my arm. Blood welled up from the small puncture wound and trickled down my tricep, staining the bedsheet. Jasmine stood there holding the white disc in her hand. The green light blinked at her one last time before she threw it onto the floor and stomped on it. The plastic crunched under her heel. "There," she said, breathing hard. "Now you are really offline." She looked at the blood on my arm. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of regret. But then she remembered the Bitcoin. She remembered the mansion she did not have. She remembered the narrative. She turned and walked out of the room. She did not bandage me. She did not apologize. She picked up her cleaning bucket and locked the door, leaving me in the dark. I clutched my bleeding arm. I stared at the shattered pieces of the sensor on the floor. My lifeline was gone. The SOS signal had stopped. The data stream was severed. Dr. Sterling would see a drop-off in data, and he might just assume the battery died or the sensor failed. He would not see the end of the message. I was completely alone. The pain in my arm was a dull throb, but the pain in my mind was sharper. I had failed. I had played my hand, and I had lost. Now I was blind. I had no way of knowing my blood sugar levels. I was flying a plane through a storm with no instruments. Night fell. The house grew quiet. The hunger came back, a gnawing emptiness in my gut. But I did not dare eat the bread they had left, not without the sensor. If I spiked too high now, I would not know when to purge. I could slip into a coma in my sleep. I dragged myself off the bed. I was weak, so weak. I needed water. I needed to know what they were planning. Jasmine's outburst had revealed their anger, but I needed to know their timeline. How long did I have before they stopped playing games and started finishing the job? I crawled to the door. The gap at the bottom was small, but the house was old. The floorboards carried sound well. I pressed my ear against the cold wood. I heard footsteps in the kitchen down the hall. Heavy footsteps. Ethan. And the click of heels. Camilla. "Did you get the transfer notification?" Ethan asked. His voice was tense. "No," Camilla replied. "The wallet shows zero balance. But the blockchain explorer says the funds moved. It is stuck in the mempool or something. Or maybe he gave us a secondary key that requires a time release." "He is playing us," Ethan growled. "I told you, he is a security freak. He probably has a dead man switch or a delay. So what do we do?" Camilla asked. "We cannot keep him in there forever. Jasmine is getting jittery. She came out of there shaking today. She said he was trying to use his medical device to signal someone. She broke it," Ethan said. "It is fine. He is dark." "But for how long?" Camilla's voice dropped lower, taking on a sinister edge. "We cannot feed him pasta for a month. People will start asking questions. He has a dentist appointment next week. He has a haircut scheduled. We need this done." I pressed my ear harder against the floor, holding my breath. 3 days, Ethan said. My blood ran cold. 3 days, he repeated. We give him 3 days to cough up the bypass code or whatever trick he is using to hold the money. We starve him. We dehydrate him. We let the ketoacidosis set in. It is painful. It will break him. And if he does not break, Camilla asked. Then we finish it, Ethan said. We give him a bolus, a massive dose of insulin, enough to drop his sugar to 0 in 10 minutes. He goes to sleep, he does not wake up. We call 911. We say he was confused. He was old. He miscalculated his dose because of his failing eyesight. It happens all the time. An accidental overdose. Camilla was silent for a moment. Then I heard the clink of a wine glass. 3 days, she said. If the money is not in our account by Friday midnight, he has an accident. I slumped back against the bed frame. The room seemed to spin around me. It was not a hostage situation anymore. It was a countdown. I had 72 hours. I looked at the boarded-up window. I looked at the broken sensor on the floor. I looked at my shaking hands. I was 68 years old. I was starving. I was unmonitored, and I had 3 days to live. But as I sat there in the dark, a cold rage began to replace the fear. They thought I was a helpless old man. They thought I was just a source of funds. They forgot that before I was a rich man, I was a poor man who fought his way out of the projects in Chicago. They forgot that I had survived worse things than hunger. They wanted a war. They wanted to play games with my life. Fine. I crawled back onto the bed. I needed to conserve energy. I needed to think. I needed an ally. And I remembered Marcus, the young nurse Camilla had hired to keep up appearances for the neighbors. He came every other day to check my vitals and change my sheets. He was coming tomorrow morning. Camilla thought he was just a paid employee. She thought he was too young and too scared to ask questions. But I had seen his eyes the last time he was here. I had seen the way he looked at the boarded window. I had seen the way he hesitated when Camilla told him not to speak to me. Marcus was my only chance. I closed my eyes and began to formulate a plan. I would not die in this room. I would not let them win. I would survive. And I would make sure that when Friday midnight came, it would not be my life that ended, but their freedom. The morning sun did not reach my room. The plywood Ethan had drilled over the window turned the day into a perpetual gray twilight. I lay on the mattress shivering despite the heat. My arm, where Jasmine had ripped the sensor off, was throbbing with a dull, infected heat. My stomach had stopped growling hours ago, replacing the hunger with a hollow nausea. I was fading. I knew the signs. The dehydration was thickening my blood, making my heart work double time just to push the sludge through my veins. Then the lock clicked. I did not move. I expected Ethan with his tray of poison or Jasmine with her mop. But when the door swung open, I saw a silhouette that made my heart leap. It was Marcus. He stood in the doorway wearing his blue scrubs, holding a medical bag. He was young, maybe 25, with a face that still held the softness of youth, but eyes that had seen the hard reality of emergency rooms. He was a nursing student who worked for a private agency picking up home care shifts to pay for his tuition. Camilla had hired him 2 weeks ago to come in every other day to check my vitals and change the sheets. It was part of her cover story. She needed the neighbors to see a medical professional entering the house so that when I eventually died, she could say we did everything we could. Marcus took a step inside and stopped. He looked at the boarded window. He looked at the empty desk where my computer used to be. He looked at the bruises on my neck where Ethan had grabbed me. "Mrs. Bell," he said, his voice uncertain. "What happened to the window?" Camilla stepped out from behind him. She was wearing a crisp white blouse and slacks, looking every inch the concerned wife. She placed a hand on Marcus' shoulder. Her nails were painted a blood red. "Oh, Marcus," she sighed. "It has been a terrible night. Desmond had another episode. He tried to break the glass. He thought there were snipers in the garden. We had to board it up for his own safety." Marcus looked at me. I tried to sit up, but my arms were shaking so badly I collapsed back onto the pillows. "Snipers?" he asked. Camilla nodded sadly. "The dementia is accelerating. He is paranoid. He thinks we are stealing his money. He thinks the food is poisoned. He even thinks his own daughter is a spy. It is heartbreaking." She walked over to the bed and smoothed the sheet near my feet, avoiding looking at my face. "We are considering a facility," she whispered loud enough for me to hear. "But he gets so violent when we mention it. We just want to keep him comfortable here as long as we can." She looked at Marcus with wide, pleading eyes. "Please do not mention the window to the agency. They might force us to hospitalize him, and that would just kill him." "He is terrified of hospitals." Liar, I thought. "You are the one terrified of hospitals because doctors ask questions." Marcus hesitated. He looked at the board again, then at me. "I understand, Mrs. Bell," he said slowly. "Dementia can be unpredictable. I will just check his vitals and clean him up." "Thank you, Marcus," Camilla said. "I will stay right here. He is calmer when I am in the room." She pulled a chair to the foot of the bed and sat down, crossing her legs. She was not there to comfort me. She was there to make sure I did not speak. She was the warden. Marcus approached the bed. He set his bag down on the nightstand. He took out a blood pressure cuff and a thermometer. His movements were efficient, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He sensed the wrongness of the room. The air was thick with it. "Mr. Bell," he said softly, "I am going to take your blood pressure. Can you give me your arm?" I lifted my right arm. It was heavy. He wrapped the cuff around my bicep. As he pumped it up, he leaned in close to check the gauge. I looked at him. I tried to project every ounce of sanity I had left into my gaze. I needed him to see me. Not the patient, not the dementia case. The man. "Help me," I mouthed. No sound. Just the shape of the words. Camilla stood up immediately. "What did he say, Marcus?" she asked sharply. "Is he asking for his wallet again?" "Desmond, honey, you do not have a wallet anymore, remember?" Marcus looked at her, then back at me. "He did not say anything, Mrs. Bell. He is just breathing hard." He finished with the cuff. "Blood pressure is very low," he said, frowning. "And his pulse is thready. Is he eating?" "He refuses," Camilla said quickly. "We try to feed him, but he spits it out. He says we put arsenic in the pasta. What can we do?" Marcus reached for my left arm to check my pulse. That was the arm with the wound. He rolled up my sleeve and gasped. "What happened here?" he asked, staring at the raw, jagged patch where the sensor used to be. He tore it off. Camilla lied without missing a beat. "Last night. He said the government was tracking him through it. We tried to stop him, but he was frantic." Marcus looked at the wound. It was inflamed red streaks radiating outward. "This is infected," he said. "I need to clean this and dress it properly. Do you have any antibiotics?" "I will check the cabinet," Camilla said. She turned her back for a second to walk to the door. This was my chance. My only chance. I could not speak. If I spoke, she would spin it as madness. I needed a signal that could not be misinterpreted, a signal that proved I was lucid, that I was rational, that I was trapped. As Marcus reached into his bag for gauze, I lunged. It was not an attack, it was a desperate grab. I seized his left hand with my right hand. I gripped it hard. My fingers dug into his palm. Camilla spun around. Desmond let go of him. She shouted, rushing back. I started to shake. I let my eyes roll back slightly, mimicking the start of a seizure. I made a guttural sound in my throat. He is seizing. Marcus shouted, hold his legs. Camilla grabbed my ankles, pinning them down. Marcus tried to pull his hand away, but I held on. I needed skin on skin. I needed him to feel the rhythm. I stopped shaking my hand. I held his palm flat, and then I tapped. With my index finger, I tapped against the center of his palm. Tap, 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 short, sharp, deliberate. Then I held my finger down. Press, 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 long, sustained, then again. Tap, 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 SOS. Marcus froze. He stopped trying to pull away. He looked down at our joined hands. He looked at my face. My eyes were focused on his, locked onto his pupils with an intensity that burned. I did it again. Tap, 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 press, 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 tap, tap, tap. I saw the realization hit him. He was a medical student. He knew patterns. He knew that a seizure was chaotic, random firing of neurons. This was ordered. This was language. I saw his breath hitch. He looked at Camilla, who was struggling with my legs, her face twisted in exertion and annoyance. She did not see my hand. She did not feel the message. I switched codes. I needed him to know who to call. Tap, press, press, tap. P, press, press, press. O, tap, press. Tap, tap. L, tap, tap. I, press, tap, press, tap. C, tap. E, police. I spelled it out letter by letter, tapping the code into his skin. I prayed he knew Morse code, or at least that he recognized that I was spelling something, anything. Marcus stared at me. His eyes widened. He swallowed hard. He gave my hand a single firm squeeze. Acknowledgement. Then he looked up at Camilla. The seizure is passing, he said, his voice tight. He is relaxing. I let my body go limp. I released his hand. I fell back onto the pillows, panting. I had spent the last of my energy. Camilla stood up, smoothing her hair. My God, she said. That was terrifying. Do you see what we deal with, Marcus? He is a danger to himself. Marcus did not look at her. He was busy opening an antiseptic wipe. His hands were trembling slightly. I see, he said quietly. I see exactly what is happening. He cleaned my arm. He applied the bandage. He worked in silence, but every time he touched me, his touch was gentle, reassuring. He knew. He packed his bag. He zipped it up. I have to go, Mrs. Bell, he said, standing up. I have another patient across town. Camilla walked him to the door. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thick white envelope. Here, she said, handing it to him. This is for your extra time, and for your silence. We really do not want the neighbors to worry. Marcus took the envelope. He could feel the thickness of the cash inside. It was a bribe, plain and simple. Thank you, he said. He walked toward the door, but then he stopped. He patted his pockets. Shoot, he muttered. I think I dropped my keys. He knelt down near the foot of the bed. Camilla was standing by the door, impatient, holding it open. Marcus fumbled on the floor. His bag was open. I watched him. He reached into the side pocket of his medical bag. He pulled out a small, brightly colored object. It was a plastic toy phone, bright red and blue. The kind you give to a toddler. But Marcus did not have a toddler. He slid the toy across the floor. It skidded silently over the rug and came to a stop deep under the bed frame, hidden by the dust ruffle. Found them, he said, standing up and jingling his car keys. He looked at me one last time. He nodded imperceptibly. Take care, Mr. Bell, he said. I will see you soon. He walked out. Camilla slammed the door and locked it. I heard her footsteps fading down the hall. I heard her laughing. He took the money, she said to someone, probably Ethan. He is just a kid. He does not care. We are clear. I waited until the house was silent. Then I leaned over the side of the bed. I peered into the darkness underneath. The red and blue plastic toy glinted in the shadows. I knew that phone. I had seen it in a spy shop catalog years ago. It was not a toy. It was a nanny cam disguised as a child's plaything. It had a motion-activated microphone and a high-capacity battery. It could record audio for 48 hours. Marcus had left me a wire. He had taken the bribe, but he had not taken the bait. He was my ally. I reached down and dragged the phone closer. I pressed the small button on the back to ensure it was active. A tiny, barely visible light blinked once. I lay back on the bed. I was still starving. I was still a prisoner, but I was no longer alone. The room was listening, and soon the world would be too. But I did not know if Marcus would go to the police immediately. He seemed scared. He might need more proof. He might be waiting for me to give him something concrete. I needed to get them to confess. I needed to get them to say the words out loud in this room within range of the microphone. I needed to provoke them. I looked at the door. I waited for the next meal delivery. I waited for Ethan. When he came back, I would not be the silent victim anymore. I would be the bait. And I would make sure he shouted his crimes loud enough for a plastic toy to hear every single syllable. The thirst had become a physical weight pressing down on my chest. It felt as if my blood had turned into wet concrete, sluggish and thick, clogging my veins with every beat of my heart. I lay on the mattress staring at the ceiling where a water stain looked like a map of a country that did not exist. I was floating in and out of consciousness. The ketoacidosis was setting in. My breath smelled fruity and chemical, a sign that my body was eating itself alive to find energy. The door flew open with a violence that shook the frame. Ethan marched in. He did not bring a tray. He did not bring water. He brought a fury that filled the small room. He looked at me, and I saw that his patience had finally evaporated. He was a man who had gambled everything on a timeline, and that timeline was expiring. "Get up," he roared. I tried. I really did. But my arms trembled and gave way. I collapsed back onto the mattress. Ethan did not wait. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed the front of my shirt and hauled me up. His hands moved to my throat. He squeezed. I choked, gasping for air that would not come. He slammed me back against the headboard. The wood dug into my spine. His thumbs pressed into my windpipe, cutting off the blood flow to my already starving brain. "I am done playing nurse," he hissed into my face. His breath smelled of stale coffee and fear. "You think you can wait us out? You think we are going to get scared and call an ambulance? We are not. If you do not give me that password right now, I will squeeze until something pops, and then we will take your finger and unlock your phone ourselves after you are dead." My vision went red at the edges. I clawed at his hands, but my grip was weak, like a child fighting a giant. I looked into his eyes and saw the truth. He was not bluffing. He was terrified of his debt collectors more than he was terrified of murder. He was going to kill me right here on this bed. I gagged. I tapped his arm. The universal sign of submission. He did not let go immediately. He held on for 3 more seconds, letting me feel the proximity of death. Then he released me. I slumped forward, coughing violently, my lungs burning. I sucked in air that tasted like dust and survival. "Talk, Ethan," commanded, standing over me. I looked up at him. I looked past him at the open door where Camilla was standing. She held the insulin pen. It was the carrot to Ethan S.'s stick. "Okay," I wheezed. My voice was a broken rasp. "You win. I cannot take it anymore." Ethan S.'s face transformed. The rage vanished, replaced by a hungry excitement. He pulled the laptop from his backpack and threw it onto the bed next to me. He opened it and navigated to the wallet login screen. "Type it," he said. I looked at the keyboard. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hit the keys. I had to do this perfectly. I had to sell the lie. "It is a passphrase," I whispered. 12 words. I typed them slowly, one by one. Ocean, fabric, silent, tower. Ethan watched my fingers like a hawk. Review, broken, winter, glass. I paused after the 8th word. I closed my eyes, pretending to fade. "Keep typing," he shouted, shaking my shoulder. "Do not pass out on me now." I opened my eyes. Market, signal, honest, grave. I hit enter. The screen loaded. A small spinning wheel appeared. Ethan held his breath. Camilla took a step into the room. Then the dashboard appeared. Total balance, $524,190. Ethan screamed. It was a sound of pure primal victory. "Yes," he shouted, throwing his hands in the air. "Yes, $500,000. We did it." He grabbed the laptop and danced around the room. "Look at that, Camilla. Look at those zeros. We are rich. We are saved. Camilla ran to him. She looked at the screen and her hand covered her mouth. Tears of greed welled in her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Desmond. Why did you make us wait so long?" She looked at me not with gratitude but with vindication, as if I had finally paid a debt I owed her. I leaned back against the headboard, closing my eyes. "The insulin," I whispered. "You promised." Ethan was too busy clicking through the transaction options to hear me, but Camilla remembered. She was the one who understood the mechanics of keeping the goose alive just long enough to get the golden egg. She walked over to me. She dialed the pen. She did not dial 10 units this time. She dialed 30, a full corrective dose. She grabbed my arm, the one that wasn't bandaged. She jabbed the needle in. "Here," she said, pushing the plunger down. "Consider this a bonus." The liquid burned as it went in, but it was a good burn. It was the feeling of life returning. Within 15 minutes, my cells would start absorbing sugar again. The fog would lift. The pain would recede. She pulled the needle out and tossed the pen onto the bed. "There. You got what you wanted. Now go back to sleep." She turned to Ethan. "Transfer it," she ordered. "Transfer it all to the offshore account before the banks open." Ethan was already typing. Sending it to the mixer first, he said, his eyes glued to the screen. "Then to my cold storage. It will be untraceable in 20 minutes. I watched them. I watched their celebration. I watched them high-five over the laptop. They had no idea what they had just done. They thought the password unlocked the money, and it did. But they did not know that the wallet was programmed with a conditional logic script. A script I had written myself 3 years ago when I started to suspect that my family viewed me as an ATM rather than a father. The script was simple. It was a digital tripwire. Condition 1, login successful. Condition 2, funds transferred to an unrecognized address. Condition 3, no biometric voice confirmation from my primary phone within 60 seconds of transfer. If all 3 conditions were met, the system assumed the wallet had been compromised. It assumed I was being coerced or robbed. Ethan hit the enter key. Transfer complete flashed on the screen. Ethan cheered. He slammed the laptop shut. "Let us go celebrate," he said to Camilla. "Let us order food, real food, steak and lobster." "What about him?" Camilla asked, gesturing to me. "Leave him," Ethan said. "He has his insulin. He will survive until we figure out how to get rid of him permanently. Right now, I want to spend some money." They walked out of the room, leaving the door open for the first time. They were so drunk on victory they forgot the rules of the prison. I lay there feeling the insulin start to work. My heartbeat slowed, the panic receded, and in the silence of my mind I started counting. The transfer had gone through. That satisfied condition 2. My primary phone was in a plastic bin somewhere in this house, dead or destroyed. It had not received the authentication prompt. That satisfied condition 3. The trap was sprung. Somewhere in a secure server facility, a line of code executed. It started a silent, invisible countdown. 24 hours. That was the time lock. The system gave the user 24 hours to override the security protocol. It was a failsafe in case I lost my phone or made a mistake. To stop the protocol, I needed to call a specific number and speak a specific phrase. If I did not make that call within 24 hours, the system would execute the nuclear option. It would compile a data packet. This packet contained the IP address of the device that accessed the wallet. It contained the destination address of the stolen funds. It contained a log of every login attempt. And most importantly, it contained a pre-recorded video file I had made. A video where I looked into the camera and said, "If this video is being sent, it means my funds have been drained under duress. The people responsible are likely my immediate family. I am in danger. Please execute Protocol Phoenix." This packet would be encrypted and emailed to 3 recipients. My attorney, Ms. Harper, the fraud division of the FBI, and my old partner at the security firm, a man who could track a digital footprint across hell itself. Ethan and Camilla were upstairs popping champagne. They were celebrating their new fortune. They were planning vacations and car purchases. They did not hear the ticking. But I heard it. It was the sound of my justice approaching. I looked under the bed. The red plastic toy phone was still there. Its tiny light blinked in the shadow. It had recorded everything. It had recorded Ethan choking me. It had recorded the password. It had recorded their joy at stealing $500,000. I had the bait, I had the trap, and now I had the evidence. But 24 hours was a long time. The insulin Camilla gave me would last for maybe 12 hours. After that, I would be crashing again. And once the money was fully laundered and they felt safe, they might decide that a witness was a liability they could not afford. Ethan had said it himself. We will survive until we figure out how to get rid of him permanently. I had bought myself time, but I had also put a deadline on my own life. Once that email went out, Ms. Harper would act. But her action might trigger them. If they found out the accounts were frozen or flagged before the police arrived, they would come for me. And this time they would not bring a tray of pasta. They would bring a pillow or a full syringe. I needed to be ready. I needed to escape, or I needed to fortify my position. I sat up. The dizziness was fading. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. My knees held. I walked to the door. I looked down the hallway. It was empty. I could hear them in the kitchen laughing, clinking glasses. I had freedom of movement for the first time in days. I needed water. I needed food. But most of all, I needed a weapon. I crept into the hallway, moving silently on my bare feet. I headed toward the kitchen, not to enter it, but to get to the utility closet under the stairs. I opened the closet door. It creaked softly. I froze. Laughter from the kitchen. They had not heard. I reached inside. My hands brushed against winter coats and old boots. Then I felt it. The cold, heavy steel of a tire iron. I kept it there for emergencies. I gripped it. It felt good. It felt like power. I retreated back to my room. I slid the tire iron under the mattress. Then I went back to the door and closed it, leaving it just slightly ajar so I could hear them. I sat on the bed and waited. The insulin was working. My mind was sharpening. Let them celebrate. Let them eat their steak and lobster. Let them spend money they did not really have. The clock was ticking down. 23 hours and 50 minutes. When that timer hit zero, their world would end. And until then, I would be waiting in the dark with a tire iron and a plan. 2 days passed in a blur of hunger and noise. My room, the guest suite that had become my prison, was directly beneath the main living area. The floorboards were old oak, and they carried sound with cruel clarity. I lay on the mattress, my body consuming its own muscle for energy, listening to the sound of my family celebrating their theft. It was a torture worse than the physical pain. I heard the distinct chime of notifications pinging on phones. I heard the clatter of keyboards. And above all, I heard their voices. They were not whispering anymore. They were shouting with the arrogance of people who believe they have already won. They thought I was broken. They thought I was too weak to be a threat. They had forgotten about the time lock, and they had forgotten about the tire iron hidden beneath my mattress. I heard Jasmine's voice shrill and excited. "Mom, look at this," she squealed. "First-class tickets to the Maldives. They are $4,000 each, but we can afford it now, right?" "We can afford anything, darling," Camilla replied. Her voice was smooth like silk dragged over gravel. "Book them and get the ocean villa. I am done with budget travel. I want the one with the private pool." I lay in the dark, my mouth dry as parchment, imagining them upstairs. Jasmine, my daughter, who used to ask me for quarters for the vending machine, was now spending thousands of dollars of my retirement money on a vacation she would take while I rotted in a nursing home or a grave. I heard Ethan laugh. It was a loud, booming sound. "Check out these watches," he shouted. "Rolex Daytonas. I am getting 2. One for me and one for the collection. It is an investment, babe. They hold value better than gold. An investment." The man who lost our savings on meme coins was now lecturing my daughter on investments using the money he had extorted from me. I tried to move my legs. They were heavy numb. The insulin Camilla had given me was wearing off. My blood sugar was climbing again, creeping back into the danger zone. I was thirsty, so thirsty. I had finished the tap water from the bathroom sink hours ago, and they had not brought more. I heard a heavy thud above me. Then the sound of tearing cardboard. Packages. They were already receiving deliveries. Same-day shipping for the new rich. "I hate this color," Jasmine complained. "Send it back. Just buy the other one. Who cares about the restocking fee? We have $500,000. They were burning through the decoy wallet. They were eating the bait. I closed my eyes. Every laugh upstairs was a physical blow. They were not just stealing my money. They were erasing me. They were replacing the memory of Desmond the father with Desmond the ATM. They did not care if I was hungry. They did not care if I was in pain. I was just an obstacle they had successfully bypassed. But then the atmosphere changed. I heard a sound that did not belong to the party. It was a siren, distant at first, then getting louder. It cut through their laughter like a knife. The siren stopped abruptly right outside the house. Then came the pounding on the front door. 3 heavy, authoritative knocks. Police open up. The silence upstairs was instant and absolute. The laughter died. The footsteps stopped. I felt a surge of adrenaline cut through my exhaustion. This was it. A neighbor must have heard me screaming earlier when I tried to break the door, or maybe Marcus had tipped them off anonymously. I dragged myself to the edge of the bed. I had to make noise. I had to let them know I was here. I grabbed the tire iron from under the mattress. It was heavy in my weakened hands. I swung it at the door. Clang. It hit the wood with a dull thud, not loud enough. I swung again. Clang. Upstairs, I heard panic. "Ethan, get down here!" Camilla hissed. I heard heavy boots thundering down the stairs. They were coming for me. I swung the iron again. "Help!" I tried to scream, but my throat was so dry it came out as a raspy croak. "Police, help me!" The door to my room flew open. Ethan stood there. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. He held a small case in his hand. It was not my insulin kit. It was a small black zipper bag he used for his gym supplements. "Shut up," he hissed. "Shut up, old man. Police, open up or we will breach the door," the voice outside shouted. Ethan lunged at me. He did not try to hit me. He tackled me onto the mattress, pinning my arms with his knees. He was heavy, sweating with fear. "You are going to ruin everything," he snarled. He unzipped the bag with one hand while holding me down with the other. He pulled out a syringe. It was already filled with a clear liquid. "This is not insulin, Desmond," he whispered. "This is a little cocktail I mix for my back spasms. Muscle relaxant and a heavy sedative. It is going to make you very quiet." "No," I gasped, struggling against his weight. He jammed the needle into my thigh right through my pants. He pushed the plunger down in one violent motion. I felt the cold burn of the liquid entering my muscle. Ethan pulled the needle out and threw it across the room. He jumped off me. "Do not try to talk," he said, breathless. "You will just embarrass yourself." He ran out of the room, slamming the door but leaving it unlocked. He needed to set the stage. I tried to sit up. I tried to grab the tire iron again, but my hands refused to obey. The drug was fast, terrifyingly fast. A numbness spread from my thigh up my torso. My tongue felt thick and swollen like a dead fish in my mouth. My eyelids drooped. I heard the front door open upstairs. "Good afternoon, officers," I heard Camilla S.'s voice. It was trembling, perfectly pitched to sound like a distressed wife, not a criminal. "Is everything okay?" "Ma, and we received a report of screaming from this address," the officer said. "A neighbor called it in, said it sounded like someone was in distress." "Oh, thank God you are here," Camilla sobbed. "It has been a nightmare, officer. My husband. He is having an episode." "An episode?" the officer asked. His voice was skeptical but softening. "Yes, dementia." Camilla lied. "He has been aggressive all day. He thinks he is being held prisoner. He thinks we are stealing from him. We had to lock him in the guest room for his own safety because he tried to attack our daughter. I tried to shout, 'Liar! She is a liar!' But all that came out was a low moan. Goo, can we see him, Ma?" the officer asked. "We need to do a welfare check." "Of course," Camilla said. "Please be careful. He is very confused. He might try to bite." I heard the boots on the stairs, heavy, rhythmic steps. They were coming down to my cell. I fought the drug. I focused every ounce of my will on my jaw muscles. I just needed to say one word, help, just one word. The door pushed open. 2 police officers stood there. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other younger. They looked at the boarded window. They looked at the mess on the floor. And they looked at me. I was lying halfway off the mattress, one leg dragging on the floor. I was covered in sweat. My eyes were rolling back in my head, fighting the sedative. Drool was leaking from the corner of my slack mouth. I looked like exactly what she said I was. A man who had lost his mind. "Sir," the tall officer said, stepping forward. "Are you okay?" I tried to lift my head. I tried to point at Ethan, who was standing in the hallway behind them, wringing his hands like a worried son. I tried to speak. Poi, son." It was gibberish. My tongue would not make the shapes. The muscle relaxant had paralyzed my vocal cords. The sounds were wet and guttural. "See?" Camilla cried, rushing into the room. She grabbed a towel and wiped the drool from my chin, her touch rough and possessive. "Oh, Desmond, honey, look at you. You are working yourself up again." She looked at the officers with tears in her eyes. He has not taken his medication in 2 days. He thinks we are poisoning him. We try to feed him, but he spits it out. Look! She pointed to the corner where I had hidden the food under the floorboard. She must have found it earlier. She had pulled the board up, exposing the rotting pile of chewed pasta. He hides his food, she sobbed. He is starving himself. We do not know what to do. The officer looked at the food. He looked at the boarded window. Why is the window boarded, Mom? He asked. He tried to jump out yesterday, Ethan interjected, stepping forward. He said the CIA was in the bushes. We had to secure it. We are waiting for a bed at the specialized facility, but they are full until next week. The officer looked back at me. I was trying to focus my eyes on his badge number. I wanted him to see the intelligence behind the paralysis. I wanted him to see that I was trapped inside my own body. I lifted my hand. It trembled violently. I reached toward the officer. He took a step back, his hand resting on his taser. Easy, sir, he said. We are not going to hurt you. I wanted to grab his pen. I wanted to write. But my fingers curled into a claw, useless and spasmodic. He seemed sedated, the younger officer noted. We had to give him something to calm him down, Camilla said quickly. The doctor prescribed it, just to help him sleep. Otherwise he screams for hours. The tall officer sighed. He relaxed his stance. He saw a tragedy, not a crime. He saw a loving family struggling with a sick patriarch. I understand, Ma, he said. My father went through something similar. It is hard. It is the hardest thing we have ever done, Camilla wept, burying her face in Ethan's shoulder. We just want him to be safe. I felt a tear leak from my eye. It was hot and stinging. They had won. They had turned the law into their audience. Is there anything we can do? The officer asked. Do you need medical assistance? No, thank you, officer, Ethan said. He is calming down now. We just need to let him rest. We will call his doctor if he gets worse. The officer nodded. He looked at me one last time with pity. Hang in there, sir, he said to me. Your family is here for you. Then he turned and walked out. No, I screamed inside my head. Come back. Look at my arm. Look at the bruises. Test my blood. But the sound did not leave my lips. The officers walked up the stairs. I heard the front door close. I heard the engine of the patrol car start up and drive away. Ethan let out a long, shaky breath. He leaned against the door frame, wiping sweat from his forehead. That was close, he whispered. Too close. Camilla stopped crying instantly. Her face hardened into a mask of pure, cold rage. She turned to look at me. You tried to scream, she hissed. After everything we did to keep you comfortable, you tried to get us arrested. She walked over to the bed. She slapped me. It was not a hard slap, but it was humiliating. You ungrateful old man. You want to play games. Fine. No more food, no more water, and no more sedatives. You are going to stay awake, and you are going to suffer until that money clears. She grabbed the door handle. Ethan, board up the hallway door too, she ordered, and turn up the sound system. If he screams again, I want the neighbors to think we are watching an action movie. They left. The door slammed. The lock clicked. I lay in the dark, paralyzed, drooling, defeated. The drug was pulling me down into a black hole of unconsciousness. I fought it, but I was losing. I closed my eyes. I was going to die here. The police had come and gone. My last hope was extinguished. But then, as my vision faded to black, I saw something. Through the crack in the plywood covering the window, a tiny beam of sunlight pierced the room. And in that beam of light, I saw movement outside. I forced my heavy eyelids to stay open for 1 second longer. There was a face pressed against the glass on the outside of the window between the plywood slats. It was Marcus. He was crouching in the bushes, holding his phone up. The lens was pointed right at the crack. He had seen it. He had seen the police leave. He had seen Camilla's miraculous recovery from grief to rage. He had seen the slap. He held up a hand. He pressed it against the glass, 5 fingers spread wide. Then he made a fist. Solidarity. He did not run away. He did not leave. He sank back into the bushes, disappearing from view, but I knew he was still there. The drug took me then. I slid into the darkness. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I did not feel fear. I felt something dangerous. I felt something cold. I felt the first stirrings of victory, because the police had left, but the witness remained. And when I woke up, I would have 24 hours to burn their world down. The time lock was ticking, and now I had an army of one waiting in the garden. I woke up to the sound of my own heart beating against my ribs. It was a slow, heavy thud that echoed in my ears like a war drum. The sedative Ethan had injected into my thigh was wearing off, leaving behind a chemical hangover that made my thoughts sluggish and thick. I blinked in the darkness. My mouth tasted like copper and old dust. I tried to move my fingers. They twitched. The paralysis was fading, but the weakness remained. I turned my head toward the digital clock on the nightstand. It was gone. Ethan had taken it along with everything else. But I had spent 40 years working in server rooms without windows. I had an internal clock that was rarely wrong. I estimated it was just past 1 in the morning. That meant the time lock on the decoy wallet was ticking down into the critical zone. I closed my eyes and visualized the code I had written. The conditional logic script was running on a remote server waiting for my input. If I did not authenticate my identity within the 24-hour window, the system would execute the failsafe. It would send the data packet to Ms. Harper. But as I lay there in the dark, a terrifying realization hit me, a flaw in my own design. The data packet was just an email. A very important email, yes, but still just digital text and a pre-recorded video file from 2 years ago. Spam filters had become aggressive in the last year. Ms. Harper's firm used a high-security firewall for their incoming mail. An automated message from a dormant server might be flagged as a phishing attempt. It might go straight to her junk folder. Or worse, her secretary might see it, delete it, and think nothing of it until it was too late. I needed to upgrade the alert. The system had a secondary trigger, a voice print authentication. If I could log in and speak a specific passphrase, the system would flag the email as verified distress priority 1. It would bypass the firewall. It would send a push notification directly to Ms. Harper's personal device, bypassing her staff entirely. It would wake her up. But to do that, I needed a phone. A real phone with an internet connection. The toy phone under the bed was a recording device, not a transmitter. It was gathering evidence, but it could not send it. I was sitting on a mountain of proof with no way to ship it to the world. My anxiety began to spike. My blood sugar was climbing again, fueled by the stress hormones flooding my system. I could feel the thirst returning, that terrible dry heat in the back of my throat. If I did not get that signal out before the timer expired at 10 in the morning, the email might be lost in the digital void. And I would die in this room waiting for a rescue that never came. I needed a miracle. And then I heard a scratch. It came from the bathroom. The guest suite had a small ensuite bathroom. Ethan had checked it for windows, but he had been lazy. There was a small ventilation window high up on the wall above the shower. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a child. He had glanced at it, seen it was latched, and ignored it, assuming I was too old and stiff to reach it. But he did not know that 2 days ago, before the police arrived, during that brief window of time when I had freedom of movement, I had used the handle of a toilet brush to pop the latch open. I had left it just to crack ajar, a tiny sliver of hope. The scratching sound came again, like a branch rubbing against the glass, but there were no trees on that side of the house. I dragged myself off the mattress. My legs felt like they were made of sand. I crawled across the floor. The carpet burned my elbows. I reached the bathroom door and pushed it open. The room was pitch black, but up high near the ceiling I saw a shadow moving against the faint moonlight outside. The window slid open. A hand appeared, then an arm, then a face. It was Marcus. He was squeezing himself through the narrow opening. It was a tight fit. I heard the fabric of his shirt tearing. I heard him grunt with effort. He was risking everything, breaking and entering, trespassing. If Ethan heard him, if Ethan came down with his gun, Marcus would be dead. He tumbled into the shower stall with a soft thud. He froze, listening. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked. Ethan was pacing. He was awake, probably watching the crypto markets, obsessing over his stolen fortune. Marcus stayed still for a long minute. When the pacing upstairs stopped, he stepped out of the shower. "Mr. Bell," he whispered. "I am here," I croaked from the floor. He knelt beside me. In the dark, I could see the whites of his eyes. He looked terrified. He was shaking. "I saw the police leave," he whispered hurriedly. "I saw her hit you. I could not leave you here, sir. I went home and I tried to sleep, but I could not. My grandmother raised me, sir. If someone did this to her, I would burn the city down." He reached into his pocket. "I brought you this." He pulled out a smartphone. It was his personal phone. The screen lit up, illuminating our faces in a ghostly blue glow. The signal bars were full. Ethan's jammer was in the hallway. The bathroom was on the far exterior wall of the house. The signal was weak, but it was there. 1 bar of LTE. I grabbed the phone. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped it. "Thank you, son," I whispered. "You just saved my life." "Call 911, Marcus said, urgency in his voice. "Call them right now. Tell them you are being held hostage. Tell them about the insulin. I will testify. I will wait right here with you." My thumb hovered over the dial pad. I wanted to call. I wanted to hear the sirens again. I wanted men with badges to kick down the door and drag my family away in chains. But then I remembered the gun. Ethan had a pistol, a Glock he had bought illegally from a friend 3 months ago because he was paranoid about his debts. He kept it in the nightstand upstairs. If I called 911, the police would come to the door. They would knock. Ethan would panic. He was unstable drunk on power and fear. If he saw the police again, he might not open the door. He might come down here to silence the witness. Or he might start shooting. A hostage situation. A standoff. I could not risk a shootout. Not with Marcus here. Not with my body in this condition. I would be a casualty. "No police," I said. Marcus looked at me like I was crazy. "What, why?" "They are killing you, sir." "Ethan has a gun," I said. "If the police knock, he will use it. We need a surgical strike. We need professionals who know the layout and who do not knock." I opened the browser on Marcus' phone. My fingers flew across the keyboard, muscle memory taking over. I navigated to a secure login page that looked like a boring cloud storage site. It was the portal for Harper Legal Security. Ms. Harper was not just a lawyer, she was a fixer. She handled high-net-worth clients who had problems the police could not solve quietly. 10 years ago, when I first made my fortune, I bought a kidnap and ransom insurance policy through her firm. It included a private extraction team. I typed in my username. I entered the password. Then the screen changed. "Voice authentication required. Please speak your passphrase." This was it, the moment of truth. I held the phone up to my face. I needed to sound clear. I needed to sound alive. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the stale air of the bathroom. "Red Phoenix," I said. My voice was raspy but firm. "Authorization, Desmond Bell. Delta 94. The screen processed. A spinning circle. "Please wait," Marcus whispered, watching the screen. Authorized flashed in green letters. Then a new menu appeared. Upload logic. Send emergency packet. I pressed the record button on the screen. "I need to send a current video," I told Marcus. "They need proof of life and proof of condition." I held the phone out. I pointed the camera at my face. The screen showed a man I barely recognized. Gaunt, pale, a bruise blooming on my jaw where Camilla had slapped me. My lips cracked from dehydration. I hit record. "My name is Desmond Bell," I said, looking into the lens. "It is 2:15 a.m. on Friday. I am being held against my will in my own home by my wife Camilla Bell and my stepson Ethan. I have been denied insulin for 3 days. I am being starved. They have stolen funds from my decoy wallet. Ethan is armed and unstable. Do not send the police. Execute the extraction protocol. The code is Red Phoenix. The entry point is the rear patio door. The target is hostile. Get me out." I stopped the recording. I attached the video file to the data packet that was already queued in the system. I looked at the send button. Once I pressed this, there was no going back. This was not just a lawsuit. This was a paramilitary operation. Ms. Harper's team would come in hard. They would use flashbangs. They would use force. My house would be a war zone. I looked at Marcus. "You need to leave, son," I said. "Go back out the window. Go to your car. Drive 2 blocks away and wait. When you see the black SUVs arrive, you can come back. But do not be here when they breach. They might mistake you for a hostile." Marcus shook his head. "I am not leaving you. What if Ethan comes down?" "If he comes down, I have this," I said, patting the mattress where the tire iron was hidden. "Go. You have done enough. You have a future. Do not risk it." Marcus hesitated. He looked at the phone in my hand. "Did it send?" he asked. I pressed the button. Sent appeared on the screen. Confirmation. Harper Legal Priority Inbox. "It is done," I said. "Now go." Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "Hang on, Mr. Bell. Just a little longer." He climbed back up to the window. It was harder getting out than getting in. I watched his legs disappear into the night. I closed the window, but I could not latch it. I slumped back against the tub. The message was out. The alarm was ringing in a silent office in downtown. Within minutes, Ms. Harper's phone would wake her up. Within an hour, a team would be gearing up. I crawled back to the bed. I hid Marcus S.'s phone under the mattress next to the tire iron. Now I just had to wait. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle. Upstairs, the pacing had stopped. Ethan must have gone to bed. He was sleeping on a bed of money, thinking he was safe. He did not know that the phoenix was rising. I closed my eyes and focused on the image of Ms. Harper. I had known her for 15 years. She was a woman who ate sharks for breakfast. I imagined her reading the email. I imagined the cold fury in her eyes. She would not call the cops. She would call the cavalry. And when they arrived, they would not be reading anyone their Miranda rights. They would be neutralizing threats. I checked my pulse. It was fast erratic. The sugar was eating me, but I had a deadline now. I just had to survive until sunrise. "I am coming for you, Camilla," I whispered to the ceiling. "Sleep well. It is the last good sleep you will ever have." 4 in the morning is the darkest part of the night. It is the hour when the world is silent and the human spirit is at its weakest. I lay on the mattress with the tire iron gripped in my hand, listening to the rhythm of the house. Upstairs, the floorboards had stopped creaking hours ago. Ethan and Camilla were asleep. They were dreaming of yachts and jewelry bought with stolen money. They were confident in their victory. They believed I was broken, starving, and helpless in my cell. They believed that when the sun rose, they would force the final voice authorization out of me and discard me like trash. But they did not know about Red Phoenix. I watched the seconds tick by in my head. I had been counting since Marcus left. My internal clock was synced with the estimation of Ms. Harper's response time. If the email went through at 2:15, the team would need an hour to mobilize and 45 minutes to travel from the city. That put them at my door right about now. The silence was broken not by a knock or a siren, but by a sound that was almost more terrifying because of its subtlety. It was the sound of tempered glass shattering under extreme pressure, followed immediately by the heavy thud of boots hitting hardwood. It came from the back of the house, the patio doors that led to the kitchen. Ms. Harper's team did not use the front door. They knew about the camera doorbell. They knew about the reinforced frame. They came in through the point of least resistance. I heard a startled shout from upstairs. It was Ethan. He must have been sleeping lightly, his paranoia keeping him on edge. "Who is there?" he screamed. His voice cracked with panic. I heard his heavy footsteps thundering across the floor above me. I heard the distinct metallic slide of his Glock being racked. He was armed. He was going to try to be a hero. "Ethan, do not," I whispered to the empty room. "You are out of your league." These were not burglars. These were private military contractors. They were men who had cleared rooms in Fallujah and Kandahar. Ethan was a crypto trader with a gym membership and an illegal firearm he had barely fired at a range. I heard him running down the stairs. "Get out of my house," he roared. "I have a gun." There was no verbal warning from the intruders. No shout of police dropped the weapon. That is how law enforcement operates. They have rules of engagement. They have to identify themselves. Private security operates on a different set of rules. Their primary directive is to neutralize the threat to the principal. That principal was me. And the threat was the man with the gun running down the stairs. I heard a sharp thud sound like a compressed air canister. Then a scream. It was a scream of pure agony that tore through the house. "My hand! My hand!" Ethan shrieked. Then came the sound of a body hitting the floor hard, a heavy thud that shook the ceiling of my room. Target 1 neutralized, a calm voice spoke. Not shouting, just communicating. "Weapon secured." Desmond Camilla screamed from the top of the stairs. "Desmond, what is happening?" "Stay down, Ma," the calm voice said. "Do not move." There was a scuffle, the sound of someone being physically restrained. Camilla shouting obscenities, the sound of zip ties being pulled tight. Then the boots were outside my door. "Mr. Bell," the voice said, "we are breaching. Stand clear of the door." I rolled off the mattress and pressed myself into the corner, dragging the tire iron with me just in case. The door did not open. It exploded inward. They did not pick the lock. They used a battering ram or a shaped charge I could not tell in the confusion, but the wood around the deadbolt disintegrated and the door swung open, slamming against the wall. A beam of blinding white light cut through the darkness of my cell. I squinted, raising my hand to shield my eyes. "Visual on principle," the voice said. "Target secured." A man stepped into the room. He was dressed in tactical black gear, his face covered by a balaclava. He lowered his weapon when he saw me. He saw the bruises on my face. He saw the bandage on my arm. He saw the emaciated state of my body. "Mr. Bell," he said, holstering his sidearm. "I am Team Leader Graves. Ms. Harper sent us. You are safe now." He reached out a hand. I took it. His grip was firm like iron. He pulled me up. My legs buckled, but he caught me. "Medic," he called out over his shoulder. "Principal is ambulatory but weak. Bring the chair." Another man appeared with a collapsible transport chair. They helped me sit. They checked my vitals instantly. "Pulse is thready. Signs of severe dehydration and hyperglycemia," one of them muttered. "We need to move him now." They wheeled me out of the room. I left the tire iron on the floor. I left the tray of rotting pasta. I left the red toy phone under the bed. I did not need them anymore. I was leaving this prison. We moved into the hallway. The scene was chaotic, yet controlled. The front door was still intact, but the hallway was filled with black-clad operators. And then I saw them. Ethan was on the floor near the stairs. He was curled into a fetal position, clutching his right arm. His hand was bent at a sickening angle. His wrist had been snapped. His gun lay on the floor 10 feet away, unloaded and dismantled. He was sobbing, tears and snot running down his face. He looked up at me as I rolled past. His eyes were filled with shock. He could not process what had happened. He had been the king of the castle 5 minutes ago. Now he was just a broken boy on the floor. He tried to kill us. He whimpered to no one in particular. He sent hitmen. Nobody answered him. He was irrelevant. Further down the hall near the kitchen, Camilla was pinned to the floor. A female operator had a knee in her back, keeping her flat. Camilla's silk robe was torn at the shoulder. Her hair was wild. She was not crying. She was struggling, thrashing against the restraint like a trapped animal. When she saw me in the chair, her thrashing stopped. She lifted her head. Her face was flushed with exertion and rage. "Desmond," she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "You cannot do this. This is kidnapping. You are sick. You need help." I signaled for the team to stop. "Hold on," I rasped. Team Leader Graves hesitated, but he signaled his men to pause. "Mr. Bell, we need to get you to the vehicle," he said. "Just a second," I said. I looked down at my wife. The woman who had poured my insulin down the drain. The woman who had planned to spend my life savings on a vacation while I rotted. "You cannot leave," she screeched. "We are your family." "You are confused, Desmond. Tell them to let me go. You will not survive without us. You will not escape." She truly believed it. She was so deep in her own narcissism that she thought I was the one who was lost. She thought she owned me. I looked at her. I felt the vibration of the wheelchair beneath me. I felt the IV line the medic was already prepping. I felt the freedom of the open door ahead. I did not shout. I did not argue. I did not explain that I had recorded her conspiracy or that her son-in-law was a felon. I just smiled. It was a small smile. A smirk, really. Cold and final. It was the smile of a chess player who had just announced checkmate 5 moves before the opponent even realized the game was over. "You do not get it, Camilla," I whispered. "I am not escaping. I am evicting you." I signaled the team to move. "No," she screamed behind me. "No, come back here. The password Desmond. The main wallet. You owe us." Her voice faded as we exited the house. The night air hit my face. It was cool and fresh. It smelled of wet grass and exhaust. It was the sweetest thing I had ever smelled. A black armored van was waiting in the driveway. The engine was running. The sliding door was open. They lifted me inside. The interior was set up like an ambulance. Monitors, oxygen tanks, a stretcher. They moved me from the chair to the stretcher. "Secure the perimeter," Graves ordered into his radio. "Load up. We are leaving." "Wait," I said, grabbing his sleeve. "What about them? Are you arresting them?" Graves looked at me. His eyes were hard behind the mask. "We are not police, Mr. Bell. We are extraction. Our job is to get you out. The police will deal with the aftermath once Mrs. Harper files the evidence. But right now we are leaving them here." "Leaving them here?" I asked, confused. "Without you," Graves said, "and without the assets. Ms. Harper executed a remote lock on all your accounts 10 minutes ago. The main wallet is frozen. The house deed has been flagged. The credit cards are dead." I lay back on the stretcher. I understood. It was a punishment worse than arrest. They were left in the wreckage of the home they had destroyed. Ethan with a broken arm, Camilla with her delusions, Jasmine hiding in her room. And they had nothing. The money from the decoy wallet was gone, spent on deposits and orders that would never be fulfilled. The main wallet was a fortress they could never breach. They were sitting in a house that no longer belonged to them, waiting for the sun to rise and the reality of their poverty to set in. They were not in handcuffs yet, but they were in a prison of their own making. The van doors slammed shut. The world outside disappeared. I felt the vehicle accelerate. We were moving. "Where are we going?" I asked the medic who was inserting the IV needle into my arm. "A secure facility," the medic said efficiently. "Private clinic. Ms. Harper has a suite reserved for you. No visitors, no phones, just recovery. You are going to disappear for a while, Mr. Bell." Disappear. It sounded perfect. I watched the saline drip into the tube. I felt the hydration hitting my veins. My blood sugar was still a mess, but for the first time in days, I knew I wasn't going to die. I closed my eyes. I thought about the red toy phone under the bed. I hoped Marcus would find a way to retrieve it later. Or maybe the police would find it when they finally came for Ethan. It didn't matter. The real evidence was in the cloud. The real evidence was in my blood. I was safe. But as the van sped through the dark streets, carrying me away from the life I had built and the family that had betrayed me, I felt a pang of profound sadness. Not for the money, not for the house, but for the man I used to be. The man who trusted, the man who loved blindly. That man died in that guest room. The man in the ambulance was someone new, someone harder, someone who knew that the only person you can truly trust to save your life is yourself. I drifted into sleep, the rhythm of the road rocking me gently. When I woke up, I would be in a new world, a world where I was alone but free. And for now, that was enough. The morning sun streaming through the bulletproof glass of my private recovery suite felt warm, but the report Ms. Harper handed me was ice cold. She sat on the edge of my bed holding a tablet that was streaming a security feed from the First National Bank downtown. It was not a live feed, but a recording from an hour ago. Ms. Harper smiled a shark-like smile. "You might want to watch this, Desmond," she said. "It is the moment reality makes a withdrawal." On the screen I saw Camilla. She was wearing sunglasses and a scarf, trying to hide the fact that she had spent the night in a house with no front door. She walked up to the ATM in the lobby. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She wanted to pull the daily maximum from the decoy wallet before the freeze hit. She did not know the freeze had hit 10 seconds after I entered the extraction van. She inserted the card. She typed her PIN. I watched her tap the screen aggressively. Then she stopped. She hit the cancel button. She hit it again. The machine did not spit the card back out. I watched her posture change from arrogant to frantic. She slapped the machine. She looked around. Then she marched into the bank. Ms. Harper tapped the screen, switching to the interior camera view. Camilla stormed up to the teller. I could not hear the audio, but I could read the body language perfectly. She was demanding her card. She was demanding her money. The teller, a young woman, looked at her screen. Then she stiffened. She did not look at Camilla. She looked at a button under the counter, the silent alarm. Ms. Harper narrated the scene for me. "The teller is seeing a red flag notification, Desmond. It says fraudulent activity, suspected elder abuse, do not transact, detain card." I watched as the bank manager approached. He was a tall man who had known me for years. He knew my accounts, he knew my signature, and he knew Camilla. He spoke to her calmly. Camilla waved her arms. She pointed at her phone. She was probably showing them the transfer confirmation from the night before. Then the manager shook his head. He handed her a piece of paper. "It is a notice of frozen assets," Ms. Harper explained. "It tells her that not only is the decoy wallet locked, but her personal accounts, the joint checking, even the credit cards she opened in your name are all under federal investigation." Camilla screamed. I saw the other customers turn and stare. She grabbed the paper and ripped it up. She lunged at the counter. Security guards moved in. They did not touch her gently. They grabbed her by the elbows and marched her toward the door. She was kicking. She was screaming. It was a public humiliation, the kind she was terrified of. She was thrown out onto the sidewalk. She had no cash. She had no cards. Her car was low on gas. She stood there looking at the closed glass doors. For the first time in 15 years, she looked her age. She checked her pockets. She found a quarter. "She is going to have to take the bus," Ms. Harper said. And she hates the bus. Ethan was having a worse morning. Ms. Harper swiped to the next video file. This one was dash cam footage provided by a repo recovery team. Ethan had bought a brand new luxury SUV the day after he got the decoy password. He had put down a massive cash deposit using a wire transfer from the stolen funds. He thought he was driving a trophy. He did not know that the dealership had received a chargeback notice at 9 a.m. The funds were flagged as stolen. The car was technically stolen property. The video showed Ethan driving down the main boulevard. He was driving fast, weaving through traffic with his good hand. His other arm, the one the security team had broken, was in a sling. He was probably rushing to a lawyer or a fence trying to sell the car for cash before the net closed. Suddenly, the brake lights flared. The SUV slowed down. It did not stop because Ethan hit the brakes. It stopped because the dealership had activated the remote kill switch. The engine died in the middle of a busy intersection. Ethan pounded on the steering wheel. I could see him screaming through the windshield. He tried to restart it. Nothing. The dashboard was dead. Cars behind him started honking. Traffic began to back up. Then the tow truck appeared. It was not a polite tow truck. It was a repo snatch truck. It backed up aggressively toward the front of the SUV. Two large men jumped out. They did not knock on the window. They hooked the chains to the front axle in seconds. Ethan opened the door and stumbled out. He was waving his good arm, shouting at them. "Hey, that is my car. I paid for that." One of the repo men turned around. He was twice Ethan's size. "Payment bounced, buddy," he said loud enough for the dash cam to pick up. "This ride belongs to the bank now. Step away or get towed with it." Ethan tried to grab the chain. The repo man shoved him. Ethan fell hard on his injured side. He screamed, clutching his broken wrist. He rolled on the asphalt right in the middle of the crosswalk. A crowd had gathered. People were filming with their phones. "Look at the crypto king now," I whispered. The tow truck lifted the front of the SUV. Ethan scrambled up, trying to open the passenger door, trying to grab something from inside, maybe his laptop, maybe his stash of cash. The repo man locked the door. "Personal items can be retrieved at the impound lot after you pay the recovery fee," the man said. They drove off, dragging the luxury SUV away. Ethan was left standing in the intersection. He was wearing expensive clothes, but he looked like a beggar. He had no car, he had no phone, it was likely in the car. He had a broken arm, and he had an audience of strangers laughing at his misfortune. He looked around, wild-eyed. He realized he had nowhere to go. He could not go home. The door was broken. He could not go to the bank. The accounts were frozen. He could not call Camilla. He started to limp down the street. My secure phone rang an hour later. It was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was local. Ms. Harper looked at it. "It might be Jasmine," she said. "She is the only one not in custody or transit yet. Do you want to talk to her?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to let it ring. I wanted to cut the cord completely. But the father in me, the part that had paid for ballet lessons and college tuition, needed to hear it. I needed to know if there was any remorse left in her soul. I picked up. "Hello." Dad Jasmine's voice was shrill. It was not the voice of a daughter concerned for her father's health. It was the voice of a woman inconvenienced. "Where are you?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea what is happening here?" "I am safe, Jasmine," I said calmly. "Which is more than I can say for you." "Safe," she scoffed. "You are selfish." "That is what you are." "The police were here, Dad. They put yellow tape around the house. The neighbors are all out on their lawns, staring. Mrs. Gable asked me if we were running a meth lab. Do you know how embarrassing this is?" I closed my eyes. I waited for the words, "I am sorry." I waited for, "Are you okay?" I waited for, "We made a mistake." But they did not come. "You made us look like criminals," she continued. "Ethan is hurt. Mom is wandering the streets because her cards do not work. And I am here dealing with the landlord who says we are being evicted because the lease was in your name. You need to fix this. You need to call them and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Send money, Dad, right now." I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was the final death of the hope I had carried for 20 years. "I did not make you look like criminals." "Jasmine," I said, my voice steady. "You are criminals. You held me hostage. You starved me. You stole from me." "We did what we had to do," she screamed. "You forced us. If you had just given us the money, none of this would have happened. This is your fault." I looked at Ms. Harper. She was watching me, her expression sad but supportive. She knew this was the moment. "Jasmine," I said, "I want you to listen to me very carefully because this is the last time you will ever hear my voice." "Dad, do not you dare," she threatened. You chose your side, I said. You watched me bleed on the floor and you walked away. You chose the money over the man who raised you. Well, now the money is gone, and so is the man. Dad, wait, she cried, her tone shifting to panic. I did not mean it. You did, I said. And that is the tragedy. You meant every word. I pressed the red button. The call ended. I looked at the screen. I went to the settings. I selected the number. Block contact. Then I handed the phone to Ms. Harper. Get me a new number, I said. One that no one can find. Ms. Harper nodded. It is done, Desmond. You are a ghost to them now. I leaned back in the pillows. I was tired. My body was still weak from the ordeal, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. The toxicity was gone. The leeches had been removed. I was alone in a hospital room. I had no wife. I had no daughter. But I had my dignity. I had my life. And I had a war chest of evidence that was about to rain down on them like fire. The recovery suite was quiet, but the war was far from over. Mrs. Harper walked in on Tuesday morning, and she did not look like a woman who had won a victory. She looked like a general who had just spotted enemy reinforcements on the horizon. She threw a thick legal packet onto my bed. They found a lawyer, she said. A man named Silas Thorne. They call him the Vulture. He does not take cases to win. He takes them to destroy the reputation of the opponent, so they settle out of court. I picked up the papers. My hands were steady now, thanks to the proper insulin regimen and 3 days of actual food. I read the cover sheet. Emergency petition for guardianship. Plaintiff Camilla Bell. Defendant Desmond Bell. I flipped to the next page. It was a countersuit. Defamation of character. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. And the most galling accusation of all, substance abuse leading to paranoia. They are saying the sedatives found in your system were self-administered. Ms. Harper explained, her voice tight with anger. They are claiming you are a closet addict, Desmond. They say you mixed your insulin with opioids and muscle relaxants, creating a psychotic break. They claim the kidnapping was a hallucination brought on by a bad trip. I laughed. It was a dry sound. So I boarded up my own window. I locked myself in from the outside. I starved myself until I was in ketoacidosis. That is their story. It is a good story, Ms. Harper admitted, if you do not have the evidence. Thorne knows that if he can get a judge to order an immediate psychiatric evaluation, he can freeze your testimony. He wants to paint you as an unreliable witness before we even get to the criminal charges. He is asking for an emergency hearing on Thursday. I looked at the signature at the bottom of the petition. Camilla Bell. Even after everything, even after the humiliation at the bank, she was still signing her name to lies. She was doubling down. She believed that if she just lied loud enough and paid a lawyer dirty enough, she could bend reality back in her favor. They are not retreating, I said. No, Ms. Harper said. They are cornered animals, and cornered animals bite. Thorne is expensive. I suspect they used the last of their liquid cash, maybe even pawned their jewelry to hire him. This is their Hail Mary, Desmond. If this fails, they go to prison. If it works, they get control of you again. I closed the file. Let them try, I said. They think they are dragging a confused old man into court. They do not know they are dragging a Trojan horse inside the city walls. But there was a problem. A physical problem. The story about the hallucination fell apart if the physical evidence in the house remained intact. The reinforced door, the drilled window, the scratches on the floor where I hid the food. Ethan knew that. I looked at Ms. Harper. Is the house secure? She nodded. We changed the locks yesterday. Installed military-grade biometrics. We also have perimeter cameras with motion sensors. Why? Because Ethan is not smart, I said. But he is desperate. And a desperate man knows that you cannot argue with a boarded-up window in court. You have to remove the window, or burn it. Ms. Harper pulled out her tablet. She tapped a few keys and brought up a live feed. Let us watch, she said. That night, the feed from the front door camera flickered to life. It was grainy night vision, but the image was clear enough. A figure was approaching the house. He was wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face, but I recognized the walk. I recognized the sling on his right arm. It was Ethan. He was carrying a red gasoline can in his good hand. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked around nervously. The street was empty. He thought he was alone. He thought the house was empty and unguarded. He did not know that 20 miles away I was watching him on an iPad. He walked up the steps. He approached the front door. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key ring. He selected the key to the front door. The key I had given him 5 years ago when he married my daughter. He tried to insert it into the lock, but there was no keyhole. Ms. Harper's team had replaced the standard deadbolt with a bioscanner plate, a flat black surface that required a fingerprint and a thermal signature to open. Ethan froze. He stared at the lock. He tried to jam the key into the crack of the doorframe. He pushed. He kicked the door with his boot. "Open," he hissed. I could hear him through the camera microphone. "Open, you stupid piece of junk." He backed up. He looked at the windows. He walked around to the side of the house toward the guest room, the room where he had held me. I switched the camera view to the side yard. Ethan was standing in the flower bed. He was looking at the plywood covering the window, the plywood he had installed. It was the evidence that would send him to prison for 20 years. He unscrewed the cap of the gas can. "He is going to burn it," Ms. Harper said, reaching for her phone. "I am calling the police." "Wait," I said. "Just watch." Ethan splashed gasoline onto the plywood. The smell must have been overpowering. He soaked the wood. He soaked the brick around it. He was shaking, adrenaline and fear making his movements jerky. He pulled a lighter from his pocket. He flicked it. The flame danced in the dark. He reached out to touch the flame to the wood. But then a floodlight blinded him. Ms. Harper's security system had a motion-triggered spotlight. It was 5,000 lumens of pure white light aimed directly at his face. Ethan screamed and dropped the lighter. It fell into the wet dirt, missing the gasoline by inches. Voice warning initiated, the system announced. "You are trespassing. Facial recognition confirmed. Ethan Vance. Police have been dispatched. You have 30 seconds to vacate the premises." Ethan scrambled back, tripping over his own feet. He fell into the rose bushes. He thrashed around, tearing his clothes on the thorns. He looked up at the light, his eyes wide with terror. He realized in that moment that the house was not just a building anymore. It was a fortress, and it was fighting back. He grabbed the gas can and ran. He did not look back. He sprinted across the lawn, his broken arm flapping against his chest, disappearing into the shadows of the neighborhood. I watched him go. "He did not burn the evidence," I said calmly. "He just added to it. Now we have him on video attempting arson." Ms. Harper smiled. "I will send this footage to the prosecutor in the morning. It will make a nice addition to the file." The next day, Wednesday, I decided it was time to stop hiding. Thorne, the vulture lawyer, had sent a process server to the clinic. He wanted to serve me with the subpoena personally. He wanted to rattle me. He wanted me to be afraid of the paper. Ms. Harper offered to accept it on my behalf. "No," I said. "I will take it." I dressed in a suit. It hung a little loose on my frame. I had lost 15 pounds in that room, but I cinched the belt tight. I shaved. I looked in the mirror. The bruises were fading yellow and green shadows on my jaw. I walked out to the front gate of the clinic. The process server was waiting. He was a small man with a bored expression. He held a manila envelope. "Mr. Desmond Bell?" he asked. "I am Desmond Bell," I replied, standing tall. He thrust the envelope at me. "You have been served. Emergency hearing tomorrow at 9 a.m. Do not be late." I took the envelope. I felt the weight of the lies inside. The accusations of madness, the attempt to steal my agency. I looked at the server. He expected me to be angry. He expected me to crumble. Most people do when they get served. Instead, I smiled. It was the smile of a man who knows exactly where the trapdoors are because he built the stage. "Thank you," I said. The server blinked, confused by my politeness. You are welcome," he muttered, and walked away. I watched him go. Then I turned to Ms. Harper, who was standing by the clinic doors. "They want a show," I said, tapping the envelope against my palm. "They want to prove I am crazy." Ms. Harper nodded. "Then let us give them a show, Desmond. But let us make sure we write the ending." I walked back inside. The fear was gone. The hesitation was gone. They had tried to kill me in the dark. Now they wanted to kill me in the light of a courtroom. They did not understand. I was not afraid of the light. The light was where the truth lived. And tomorrow morning I was going to shine it so bright it would burn them to ash. Thursday morning brought a gray, heavy sky that pressed against the windows of the county courthouse. It was fitting weather for a funeral, and that is exactly what my family hoped this hearing would be. A funeral for my freedom, a burial of my rights. I sat at the defendant table next to Ms. Harper. My suit was pressed, my tie was straight, and my face was a mask of stone. I watched them enter. Camilla led the procession. She had transformed. Gone was the imperious woman in silk robes who poured insulin down a drain. In her place was a frail, terrified wife. She wore a cardigan 2 sizes too big and a skirt that looked modest and worn. She wore no makeup, leaving the dark circles under her eyes visible. She leaned heavily on Ethan's good arm as if she could barely stand. Ethan looked tragic in his own way. His arm was in a sling prominently displayed. He wore a simple button-down shirt that made him look like a hard-working, blue-collar man, not a crypto gambler who owed 6 figures to loan sharks. Jasmine followed them, her head bowed, playing the part of the heartbroken daughter caught in the middle. They sat at the plaintiff table with Silas Thorne. The vulture. He was a thin man with slicked-back hair and a smile that looked like a razor cut. He arranged his papers with precise, predatory movements. He did not look at me. To him, I was just a carcass to be picked clean. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Holloway entered. She was a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had seen too many family disputes and just wanted to get through her docket. That was dangerous. A tired judge takes shortcuts. And guardianship was the ultimate shortcut. Thorne stood up. He did not waste time. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and deep, "we are here today to prevent a tragedy. We are here to save a man from himself. Mr. Desmond Bell is a beloved husband and father, but he has fallen into the grip of a terrible addiction, an addiction that has induced paranoia, violence, and psychosis." He gestured to me. "He believes his family is trying to kill him. He hallucinates conspiracies. He boards up windows to keep out imaginary snipers. And in his confusion, he has become a danger to the very people who have devoted their lives to his care." He called Camilla to the stand. She walked slowly, trembling as she took the oath. She sat down and looked at the jury box, even though there was no jury for this hearing, just the judge. But she knew how to play to the room. Mrs. Bell Thorne asked gently, "Tell us about the night of Tuesday the 12th. Camilla took a shaky breath. She pulled a tissue from her sleeve and dabbed at her dry eyes. "It was horrible," she whispered. "Desmond had been acting strange for weeks. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He was mixing his insulin with pills he bought online. He said they helped him think." She looked at me, and for a second the mask slipped. I saw the gleam of malice. Then she looked back at the judge, and the tears came. That night he snapped. He started screaming that we were stealing his bitcoins. He grabbed a tire iron. He chased Ethan. He hit him. That is how Ethan's arm was broken. Objection. Ms. Harper said, calm but firm. "Medical reports show Mr. Vance's arm was broken by a high-velocity impact, consistent with a non-lethal projectile, not a blunt instrument." "Sustained," the judge said. "Stick to what you saw, Mrs. Bell." "I saw hate," Camilla sobbed. "He locked himself in the guest room. He nailed the window shut. We tried to get him to come out. We brought him food. We begged him. But he just screamed that we were poisoning him. He was starving himself, Your Honor. We called the police, but he tricked them. He pretended to be sedated. We were terrified he would die in there." Thorne walked closer to the witness stand. "Mrs. Bell, did he ever hurt you physically?" Camilla hesitated. It was a perfect dramatic pause. "I did not want to say anything," she murmured. "I did not want him to get in trouble. But yes." She began to unbutton the cuff of her oversized cardigan. She rolled up the sleeve of her left arm. The courtroom went silent. Her forearm was covered in bruises, deep purple and black marks shaped like fingerprints. They looked like the marks of a violent grip. "He grabbed me," she whispered, "when I tried to bring him water. He twisted my arm. He said he would break it like a twig." I stared at her arm. The bruises were real. I knew they were real because I knew how Camilla's mind worked. She had not used makeup. Makeup rubs off. Makeup can be proven false. She had done that to herself. Or she had let Ethan do it to her. She had allowed her son-in-law to brutalize her own flesh just to frame me. It was a level of commitment to the lie that was almost admirable in its depravity. Judge Holloway leaned forward, staring at the bruises. Her face hardened. She looked at me, and I saw the shift. She saw a wife-beater. She saw an addict. The narrative was taking root. Ms. Harper leaned over to me. "Do not react," she whispered. "Do not shake your head. Do not look angry. If you look angry, you prove their point." I sat perfectly still. I forced my breathing to remain steady. Inside, I was screaming. I wanted to stand up and shout about the insulin sink. I wanted to shout about the white bread. But I remained a statue. Thorne looked satisfied. "No further questions." "Your Honor." Ms. Harper stood up. "We reserve our cross-examination for the defense presentation." "Your Honor." It was a strategic move. Let them build their house of cards as high as they wanted. The higher it went, the harder it would fall. Thorne called his next witness. The defense calls Dr. Aris to the stand. A man walked in. He was wearing a three-piece suit and a bow tie. He carried a leather briefcase. He looked like every TV doctor ever cast. He projected authority. He projected knowledge. He took the stand. Dr. Aris, Thorne said, "Please state your credentials for the court." "I am a board-certified psychiatrist specializing in geriatric dementia and substance abuse psychosis," Dr. Aris said. His voice was pompous and clipped. "I have testified in over 200 competency hearings." "And have you examined the defendant, Mr. Bell?" "I have reviewed his medical history," Dr. Aris said. "And I have analyzed the video evidence provided by the family." "Video evidence," Ms. Harper said sharply. "We have not received any video evidence in discovery." "It was submitted this morning," Thorne said, smiling. "It is admissible for an emergency hearing." He pulled a remote from his pocket and pointed it at the large screen on the wall. The screen flickered to life. The video was grainy. It was shot from a cell phone held vertically. It showed me in the kitchen. I was wearing my pajamas. I was shouting. I was throwing a plate against the wall. "You are all vultures," I screamed in the video. "Get out of my house." It looked damning. It looked like a man out of control. But I knew the context. That video was from 3 months ago. I had just experienced a severe hypoglycemic episode, a low blood sugar crash. When your sugar drops that low, your brain starves. You get confused. You get aggressive. It is a medical emergency, not a psychotic break. Ethan had filmed it instead of getting me juice. He had kept it. He had been saving it for a moment like this. Dr. Aris looked at the judge. "This behavior is classic," Dr. Aris lectured. "The aggression, the paranoia, the confusion. Combined with the family's testimony regarding opioid abuse, it presents a clear diagnosis. Mr. Bell is suffering from drug-induced dementia. He is a danger to himself and others. He requires immediate custodial care in a secure facility." The judge was taking notes. She was nodding. "Is there any chance of recovery?" Thorne asked. Dr. Aris shook his head sadly. "At his age and with this level of cognitive decline, it is unlikely. The brain damage is likely permanent. The kindest thing the court can do is grant guardianship to his loving family so they can manage his care and his assets." Thorne rested his case. He walked back to his table and sat down. He patted Ethan on the shoulder. Ethan smirked. He looked at me across the aisle. His eyes said, "We got you." The courtroom felt heavy. The air was thick with the weight of their lies. I could feel the eyes of the bailiff on me. I could feel the judgment of the court stenographer. They all bought it. The battered wife, the concerned children, the expert doctor. It was a perfect story. Judge Holloway looked at Ms. Harper. "Does the defense have a case, or should I rule on the motion now?" Her tone suggested she had already made up her mind. She was ready to sign the papers. She was ready to hand my life over to the people who tried to end it. Ms. Harper stood up. She did not look worried. She did not look rushed. She picked up her laptop and walked to the podium. She placed it down gently. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense moves to dismiss all charges and petitions. Furthermore, we move to have the plaintiffs remanded into custody immediately." Thorne laughed out loud. "Custody," he scoffed. "For what?" "Caring too much." Ms. Harper ignored him. She looked at the judge. "We have heard a very compelling story, Your Honor. A story of a sick man and a saintly family. But stories are just words, and words can be lies." She plugged a cable into her laptop, connecting it to the courtroom's audio-visual system. "I prefer data," Ms. Harper said. "Data does not lie. Data does not have an agenda. And Mr. Bell is a man of data." She turned to look at me. I nodded. "Your Honor," she continued, "the plaintiffs claim Mr. Bell was locking himself away. They claim he was starving himself. They claim he was hallucinating." She tapped a key. The screen on the wall changed. The grainy video of my kitchen outburst disappeared. In its place, a graph appeared. It was a complex line graph with peaks and valleys. This, Your Honor, is the cloud log from Mr. Bell's continuous glucose monitor. It tracks his blood chemistry 24 hours a day. She used a laser pointer to trace the line. Here is Tuesday morning. Normal levels. Here is Tuesday afternoon. A massive spike, consistent with the ingestion of high glycemic carbohydrates without insulin coverage. She looked at Camilla. Camilla was frowning. She did not understand what she was seeing. And here, Ms. Harper said, circling a erratic section of the graph. Here is Wednesday. Look at the pattern. Spike, drop, spike, drop, spike, drop. Does that look like the random fluctuations of a sick man, she asked? Or does it look like Morse code? The judge squinted at the screen. Morse code, she asked. Yes, Your Honor. Short, 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 long, 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 short, 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 SOS. Ms. Harper turned to the gallery. Mr. Bell was using his own blood to call for help. Thorne stood up. Objection. This is speculation. That is just a squiggly line. I have the affidavit from the monitoring physician, Ms. Harper countered. He confirms the anomaly. But if that is too abstract for the court, let us look at something more concrete. She closed the graph. She opened a video file. This file was named Red Phoenix Entry. It was the body cam footage from Team Leader Graves. The screen went dark, then lit up with the green tint of night vision. We saw the team approaching the back door. We heard the glass break. We heard Ethan scream. Who is there? I have a gun. We saw Ethan running down the stairs holding the Glock. We saw him aim it at the team. The courtroom gasped. Judge Holloway sat up straight. That is an illegal firearm, Ms. Harper narrated. Unregistered. And he is pointing it at licensed security contractors executing a wellness check. The video continued. It showed the team entering my room. It showed the boarded window. It showed the tray of rotting pasta. And it showed me. I looked like a skeleton. I was tied to the bed with duct tape residue still on my wrists. Does this look like a man who locked himself in? Ms. Harper asked. Thorne was pale. He was whispering furiously to Camilla. Camilla was shaking her head, her eyes wide. But we are not done, Ms. Harper said, because Mr. Bell is a security expert, and he knew that people like you lie. She opened the final file. This, Your Honor, is the audio recorded by a device hidden under the bed in the guest room. She pressed play. The sound was crystal clear. We give him 3 days, Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. We starve him. We dehydrate him. And if he does not break, Camilla's voice followed. Then we finish it. We give him a bolus. A massive dose. We call 911. We say it was an accidental overdose. The recording continued. It played the sound of Ethan choking me. It played the sound of me giving the password. It played their celebration. We are rich. $500,000. Let him rot. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum. Camilla stood up. That is fake, she screamed. Her voice was shrill, breaking the spell. That is AI. They made it up. That is not my voice. Sit down, Mrs. Bell, the judge barked. Ms. Harper looked at Camilla. We have the voice biometrics matched, Your Honor. It is her. And we have the transaction logs from the decoy wallet. The money went straight to an offshore account controlled by Mr. Vance. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, this was not an intervention. This was a hostage situation. This was extortion. And it was attempted murder. Judge Holloway looked at the plaintiffs. She looked at the bruises on Camilla's arm. Now she saw them for what they were. Props. She slammed her gavel down. It sounded like a gunshot. Bailiff, take the plaintiffs into custody immediately. Ethan tried to run. He jumped up, knocking his chair over. He scrambled toward the door, his broken arm flapping in the sling. The bailiff tackled him before he made it 5 feet. Camilla froze. She looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. Desmond, tell them, she begged. Tell them we love you. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked her in the eye. You do not love me, Camilla, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. You loved my wallet, and now you have lost both. The officers handcuffed her. They handcuffed Jasmine, who was sobbing silently. As they were dragged out of the courtroom, Camilla screamed my name one last time. But I did not turn around. I looked at the judge. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. Judge Holloway looked at me with respect. Mr. Bell, she said, you are free to go. I walked out of the courtroom. Ms. Harper walked beside me. "We did it," she said. "Not yet," I replied. "This was just the battle. Now I want the war, I want the sentencing, and I want my life back." We walked into the hallway. The press was there. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Bell, how did you survive? Mr. Bell, what do you have to say to your family?" I stopped. I looked into the cameras. "I have nothing to say to them," I said. "But I have something to say to everyone else. Never underestimate the quiet ones, and never ever mess with a man as Insulin." I walked through the crowd. The sun was shining outside. It was a new day, and I had a lot of living left to do. Ms. Harper was not finished. She stood in the center of the courtroom like a conductor ready to bring the symphony to its violent crescendo. She tapped the laptop keyboard again. The screen behind her flickered and changed. The grainy video of my kitchen outburst vanished, replaced by a stark, clinical grid. It was a graph, a line chart with peaks and valleys jagged and erratic like the heartbeat of a dying star. "This, Your Honor," Ms. Harper said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the gallery, "is the unedited cloud data from Mr. Bell's continuous glucose monitor. It is a biological record of torture." She used the laser pointer to trace the line. "You can see the baseline here, normal range. This was before the kidnapping. And here on Tuesday morning the chaos begins." The line spiked vertically. It went off the chart. "This represents a blood sugar level of over 400 mg, Harper explained. "It coincides exactly with the time Mr. Bell testified he was force-fed high-sugar carbohydrates and denied his corrective insulin." Silas Thorne jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor," he shouted. "This is circumstantial. Diabetics have fluctuations. This proves nothing but poor diet management." Ms. Harper did not even look at him. "Poor diet management does not create Morse code, Mr. Thorne," she said coldly. She zoomed in on the Wednesday section of the graph. The line oscillated with mechanical precision. Up, down, short, 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 long, 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 short, short, short. The courtroom fell silent. It was undeniable. It was not biology. It was language. "This is a distress signal," Ms. Harper said. "Mr. Bell was using his own body as a telegraph. He was dying by inches to send this message. Does this look like the behavior of a man in a drug-induced stupor? Or does it look like a man fighting for his life with the only weapon he had left?" Camilla stared at the screen. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked at the jagged line, and for the first time she saw the monster she had created. She saw the evidence of her own cruelty written in data points. But Ms. Harper was just getting started. She closed the graph. She looked at Ethan. He was sweating now, shifting in his seat, his good hand gripping the table. He knew what was coming, or he thought he did. "Mr. Bell is a retired security engineer," Mrs. Harper addressed the judge. "He spent 40 years anticipating threats. He knows that systems fail. He knows that backups are essential. And he knows that sometimes the best camera is the one nobody notices." She reached into her briefcase. She pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a pair of thick black-rimmed reading glasses. They looked old, scratched, held together by a bit of tape on the hinge. "Mr. Bell's reading glasses," she said. Ethan Vance threw them in a trash bin on the first day of the confinement. He thought they were garbage. He did not know they were a prototype surveillance device Mr. Bell was testing for a security firm. Ethan's face went white, a sickly ash color. "These glasses have a 120-degree wide-angle lens hidden in the bridge," Ms. Harper continued. "They record high-definition video and audio to an internal memory chip. It is motion-activated, and it has a battery life of 7 days." She plugged a cable into the evidence bag, connecting the glasses directly to the system. "Let us see what Mr. Bell saw." She hit play. The screen on the wall exploded with light. The angle was first-person shaky, but clear. It was the bathroom. My bathroom. We saw the sink, we saw the marble counter, and we saw Camilla. She was standing there in her silk robe. She was holding the insulin pen. The video quality was so good you could see the dust motes dancing in the light. You can hear the audio perfectly. "How high is it now?" she asked in the video, her voice dripping with malice. 500. We watched her tilt the pen. We saw the clear liquid drip, drip, drip down the drain. We heard my voice pleading in the background, desperate and weak. "Stop. I will give it to you. Just stop." The courtroom gasped. It was a collective sound of horror. A juror in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. The stenographer stopped typing. This was not a story anymore. This was a snuff film. We were watching a woman murder her husband by degrees. Thorne sat down hard. He knew. He knew the case was dead. He knew his client was a monster. But the video continued. The scene cut. It was dark now. The angle changed, looking up from the floor. Ethan stood over the camera. He was holding something. A black metal object. A gun. "You are going to ruin everything," he snarled in the video. He pointed the gun at the camera at my face. "Shut up, old man." He raised the gun, and then he lowered it, swapping it for the syringe. The camera caught the gleam of the needle. "This is a little cocktail I mix," he whispered. The video ended. The screen went black. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. No one moved. No one breathed. The violence of the images hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Camilla was frozen. She was staring at the blank screen, her eyes wide and unseeing. She was stripped bare. Her loving wife acted her cardigan, her tears. It was all ash now. Everyone saw the predator beneath the skin. Ethan was shaking. A violent tremor that started in his hands and took over his whole body. He looked at the judge. He looked at the bailiffs. He looked at the exit. Ms. Harper closed her laptop. The click was like a gunshot. "The defense rests," she said softly. Judge Holloway slowly took off her glasses. She looked at the defense table. Her eyes were not angry. They were disgusted. It was the look you give to something you find rotting under a floorboard. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice quiet and dangerous. "Do you have any explanation for this?" Thorne stood up. He opened his mouth. He looked at his clients. He looked at the video screen. He stammered. "I have no questions, Your Honor." It happened in a split second. The snap of a mind breaking under pressure. Ethan let out a roar. It was not a human sound. It was the sound of a trapped animal realizing the cage is closing. He jumped up. He knocked his chair backward. It clattered loudly on the floor. "You did this!" he screamed, pointing at Ms. Harper with his good hand. "You ruined it. It was mine. It was all mine." He lunged. He scrambled over the table, scattering papers and water pitchers. He was fast driven by a manic desperation. He was aiming for Ms. Harper. He wanted to hurt the person who had exposed him. Ethan, no Camilla, shrieked. Ms. Harper did not flinch. She stood her ground watching him come, but he never reached her. Two bailiffs were on him before his feet hit the floor on our side. One tackled him high, the other swept his legs. They slammed him into the carpet with a bone-jarring thud. Ethan screamed as his broken arm hit the ground. He thrashed, kicking and biting, spitting curses. "Get off me! I will kill you all! She made me do it!" He pointed a shaking finger at Camilla, who was still sitting at the table. "It was her idea," he howled as they cuffed him. "She told me to starve him. She told me to get the gun." Camilla stood up. She looked at Ethan. She looked at me. She looked at the judge. The walls of her reality were collapsing. The money was gone. The reputation was gone. The freedom was gone. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her knees buckled. She collapsed, not gracefully like in a movie, but heavily hitting the floor in a heap of gray wool cardigan. It was not an act. Her body had simply shut down under the weight of the truth. "Order," Judge Holloway shouted, banging her gavel. "Order in this court." More officers rushed in. They dragged Ethan out screaming. Paramedics were called for Camilla. I sat there in my wheelchair amidst the chaos. I watched them take my wife away on a stretcher. I watched them drag my son-in-law out in chains. I felt Ms. Harper's hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, Desmond?" she asked. I looked at the empty defense table. The papers were scattered. The water was spilled. The lie was destroyed. "I am fine," I said. I took a deep breath. The air in the courtroom tasted different now. It tasted clean. The data had spoken. The truth had screamed. And finally, the world was listening. The chaos in the courtroom eventually settled into a heavy, terrified silence. The paramedics had stabilized Camilla enough for her to stand and face her judgment. Ethan was hauled back to his feet, his broken arm pressed against his chest, his face a mask of defeat. Jasmine, who had been sitting in the gallery trying to make herself invisible, was summoned to the defense table by a bailiff. She stood there trembling, realizing that her role as the passive accomplice had just expired. Judge Holloway arranged her papers. She did not look at the defendants. She looked at the evidence one last time. The graph of my blood sugar, the video of the gun, the audio of the conspiracy. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold enough to freeze water. "In my 20 years on the bench," she said, "I have seen greed. I have seen violence. But I have never seen a family so casually discuss the slow torture and murder of their own patriarch. You did not just break the law, you broke the fundamental covenant of human decency. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Vance, you are remanded to custody without bail. You are charged with attempted first-degree murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault, and possession of an illegal firearm. Due to the premeditated nature of these crimes and the electronic evidence gathered, the district attorney is adding charges of wire fraud and conspiracy. If convicted on all counts, you are looking at a minimum of 40 years in a federal penitentiary. Ethan slumped. He did not scream this time. The fight had left him. He was just a man looking at the end of his life. The judge turned to Camilla. Mrs. Bell, your actions were particularly heinous. You used your position as a wife and caregiver to turn a home into a prison. You weaponized a life-saving medication. You are charged with attempted murder, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Bail is denied. Camilla opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, but her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder, silencing her. There was nothing left to say. And you, Ms. Vance, the judge said, looking at Jasmine, you claim you were a victim of circumstance. But the evidence shows you were a willing participant. You monitored the prisoner. You destroyed medical equipment. You are charged as an accessory to attempted murder and conspiracy. You are also remanded to custody. The gavel fell. It was the sound of a heavy steel door slamming shut. I watched as the bailiffs moved in. They handcuffed my family. They led them away through a side door. They did not look back at me. They were too ashamed, or perhaps they were finally realizing that I did not exist for them anymore. I was just the witness who had put them away. As the door closed behind them, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not joy, it was not triumph. It was the sudden absence of weight. The burden I had carried for years, the burden of their ingratitude and their greed was gone. I was light. I was empty. But it was a clean emptiness ready to be filled with something new. 2 days later, I sat at a small table in a coffee shop near the university hospital. It was a sunny day. The world outside seemed brighter colors, more vivid than I remembered. I ordered a black coffee and a small fruit plate. No pastries. I was managing my levels carefully now. The door opened and Marcus walked in. He looked nervous. He was wearing his scrubs, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He scanned the room until he saw me. He hesitated, then walked over. "Mr. Bell," he said, "you look good. Better." I stood up and shook his hand. My grip was strong again. "Please sit down, Marcus," I said, "and call me Desmond." He sat. He kept his hands in his lap. He looked like a student called to the principal's office. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "I saw the news. They said the trial is over. I am glad you are safe. I am safe because of you," I said. "You risked your career. You risked your safety. You climbed through a bathroom window for an old man you barely knew." I did what was right. Marcus said simply, "My grandmother would have haunted me if I had left you there." I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a thick envelope. It was heavy. Marcus's eyes widened. He started to shake his head. "Mr. Bell, please. I did not do it for money. I cannot take your money." I smiled. I knew he would say that. That is why I liked him. That is why he was different from Ethan. "This is not cash, Marcus," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "Open it." He hesitated, then picked it up. He opened the flap. He pulled out a set of keys and a single piece of paper. He looked at the keys, then he read the paper. His mouth fell open. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock. "This is," he stammered. "This is a deed and a tuition receipt." "It is a 2-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the medical school," I explained. "It is fully furnished. The building has excellent security and high-speed internet. And the receipt is for the remainder of your medical school tuition, paid in full." Marcus dropped the paper. Tears welled in his eyes. "I cannot accept this," he whispered. "This is too much. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars." I leaned forward. "Marcus, listen to me. I have spent my life saving money for people who wanted me dead. I have millions of dollars sitting in accounts doing nothing but gathering dust. You gave me my life back. This is not a gift. It is an investment. You are going to be a great doctor. You are going to save lives. I am just making sure you have a place to sleep while you do it." He looked at the keys again. He picked them up, feeling the weight of the metal. "Thank you," he choked out. "I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," I said. Just promise me one thing. When you are a doctor and you see an old man who looks like nobody cares about him, you listen to him. You look at his eyes, not just his chart. I promise, Marcus said. I swear. We finished our coffee. We talked about his classes. We talked about his future. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a father figure to someone who actually deserved it. When we parted ways outside the coffee shop, I watched him walk down the street, his step lighter, his future bright. I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the sun. The final step was the hardest but the most necessary. I stood in front of the house, my house, the house where I had raised Jasmine, the house where I had married Camilla. It was empty now. The police tape was gone, but the lawn was overgrown, the windows were dark, it looked like a skull. I did not go inside. I did not need to. I had hired a company to clear it out. They were instructed to sell everything. The furniture, the clothes, the electronics. The proceeds were to be donated to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. It felt like poetic justice. The money Camilla and Ethan had tried to kill me for would now go to curing the disease they had weaponized against me. I met the real estate agent in the driveway. She handed me a clipboard. "Are you sure, Mr. Bell?" she asked. "The market is a little soft right now." We could wait. I signed the paper without hesitation. "Sell it," I said. "I do not care about the price. Just get it off my hands. I want it gone by the end of the month." She nodded, taking the clipboard. "Consider it done." I walked back to the waiting car. It was a town car. My driver opened the door. "To the airport, sir?" he asked. "To the airport," I confirmed. I got in. I settled into the leather seat. I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. The main wallet was unlocked now. The funds were secure. I looked at the itinerary on my screen. First stop Tokyo, then Bali, then the Swiss Alps. Places my first wife and I had talked about visiting 40 years ago. Places I had put off seeing because I was too busy working, too busy saving, too busy building a nest egg for a family that did not appreciate it. I was done waiting. The car moved onto the highway. I watched the city skyline recede in the rearview mirror. I watched the house, the courthouse, the hospital, all of it disappear into the distance. I checked my blood sugar on my new phone. 110. Perfect. I took a deep breath. The air in the car was cool and clean. I was Desmond Bell. I was 68 years old. I had no wife. I had no children. I had no home. But as the car sped toward the runway, where a private jet was waiting to take me above the clouds, I realized something profound. I had everything. I was alive. I was vindicated. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. I closed my eyes and let the motion of the car lull me into a peaceful rest. The nightmare was over. The adventure was just beginning. Life teaches us that the hands closest to us often hold the sharpest knives. For decades, I believed my generosity would buy loyalty, but I learned that greed rots even the strongest bonds. True security is not found in bank accounts or encrypted passwords, but in the boundaries we set to protect our dignity. When the people you feed try to starve you, remember that saving yourself is never an act of selfishness. It is a necessary act of survival. You must be willing to walk away from anyone who threatens your peace, even if they share your last name. If you have ever had to cut off a toxic family member to protect your own future, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice served.